They told me the asylum was shut down 20 years ago, but the intercom keeps calling my name. The weird part? It doesn't use my real one. They told me the asylum was shut down 20 years ago, but when I unlocked the main doors last night, the lights were already on. I know how that sounds, like I'm making it up for clicks or sympathy. But I swear that first night at Ravenswood was real. The power was running, the cameras were humming, and the smell of disinfectant still clung to the halls like it had never closed. I stood there, holding my flashlight, wondering if I'd walked into the wrong building or the wrong decade. They hired me through an online posting. No interview, no background check, nothing. Just a phone call from a woman who never gave her name. She said they needed a guard for property preservation, to keep out vandals, squatters and thrill seekers. Easy money, 12 hours a night, 7 nights a week, and the kind of paycheck that makes you forget to ask questions. I didn't care that the job site was an asylum. I've worked worse places, junkyards, mortuaries, even a condemned mall once. I told myself, it's just walls and cameras, the people part's long gone. Still, something about Ravenswood didn't sit right the moment I drove up that cracked road. The main gate hung off one hinge, chain link fence torn like something tried to claw its way out. There were no security lights, just the dull glow of the moon spilling over a massive sign. Ravenswood Psychiatric Hospital closed since 2001, but the doors were unlocked. The moment I stepped in, I swear I felt watched, not by someone, but by the place itself. Like the walls recognized me, I told myself it was nerves, first shift jitters. The silence was thick enough to choke on. My footsteps echoed off the tile, bouncing through the halls until they didn't sound like mine anymore. In the control room, half the monitors were static. The others flickered with grainy feeds from the east wing, mostly empty corridors, dust motes floating like ash. The phone on the desk was dead, but the intercom system still worked. I tested it, just to hear my own voice cut through the building. Security check. Anyone on site? No answer. Of course not. The place had been empty for 2 decades. Still, I thought I heard something faint right after, like laughter. Small, quick. Could have been feedback. Could have been my imagination. I filled out the logbook left behind by the last guard. His handwriting stopped abruptly halfway through a sentence. Heard movement near ward, and then nothing. No signature, no date. Just a streak across the page like the pen had been snatched away mid-word. I laughed it off. Probably some bored guy trying to freak out whoever came next. But when I flipped back through earlier pages, I noticed something strange. The entries before his were mine. My name, my handwriting, my initials at the bottom of the page. I froze. I don't remember ever working here. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe they reused old logs. That's what I told myself anyway. I tried to focus on the patrol. First floor, clear. East hall, clear. The therapy rooms were stripped bare except for bolted down chairs. One still had straps on the arms. When I passed through the patient wing, my flashlight caught words carved into the wall. Don't look at the mirrors. I didn't look. Not then. Around 2 a.m. I stopped by the break room. Old coffee machine, dusty vending machine with shattered glass, and a corkboard covered in yellowed memos. One caught my eye. Reminder, Ward C is permanently restricted. No staff entry without clearance. Ward C. The name made my chest tighten, like I'd heard it whispered in a dream. I don't remember why, but I hated it. My hands were shaking. I almost tore the memo down, but something about it felt personal. I went back to the control room and checked the cameras again. Most were still static, but one, camera 12, was on. It pointed at a dark hallway labelled Ward C. There shouldn't have been power in that section, yet a single light flickered at the end of the hall. For a moment, I thought I saw someone standing there. A shape. Faint, but human. I blinked and it was gone. I told myself I was overtired. I told myself I'd check it tomorrow. But when I reached for the radio, it was already on. A voice crackled through the static. A man's voice. Low, calm, almost friendly. "Evening, Evan. Making your rounds?" My blood ran cold. I hadn't told anyone my name, not even the woman on the phone. I stammered, asking who it was, but the line cut off. Only static. I sat there, staring at the intercom speaker, listening to my heartbeat thud in my ears. Then slowly, it came back on. Softer this time, like a whisper right behind me. "You're late again, Evan." I spun around. The room was empty. I shut off the intercom, locked the control room door, and sat in silence for the rest of my shift. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink much. I just watched those monitors. Watched camera 12 until dawn. When I went to clock out that morning, I noticed the time card next to mine. The name written in faded ink said, Evan R. Replacement. But the date, it was from 1999, and just before I could tear it down, the intercom crackled again, one last time, hissing softly through the static. "Welcome back, Evan. You ever wake up with a memory that doesn't belong to you, like a flash of someone else's life? Only you know it happened to you." That's how the second night started. I couldn't sleep after what happened with the intercom. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it again. My name whispered like someone was crouched beside my bed. By the time I drove back to Ravenswood, the sun hadn't even set. I told myself I just wanted to check the wiring, maybe see if there was some radio interference. But deep down, I think I wanted to hear the voice again. When I pulled up, the front gate was standing straight this time. Not hanging, not broken, just upright, locked, neat, like someone had fixed it overnight. I remember thinking that couldn't be right. I'd seen it crushed under rust just hours ago. Inside, the smell hit me first. Not the dust and mold I expected, but something sharp, burnt metal and flowers. It made my eyes water. The corridors looked cleaner than before, the floors gleaming faintly under the flickering lights. I told myself maintenance must have come through, but no one's maintained Ravenswood in 20 years. The control room was just how I left it, except the logbook was gone. The desk was bare, smooth as if it had never been touched. On the monitor grid, camera 12 still showed that same hallway. Still lit, still humming faintly. Ward CI don't know why I started talking into the intercom again. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that there was no one there. Control to any staff on site. "This is Evan Richards, security. Identify yourself." Silence. Then a burst of static that made me flinch. After a moment, a man's voice came through. Soft, calm, measured. "Evan, you're early tonight." My throat tightened. "Who is this?" "Dr. Lang," he said, like I should have known the name. "You know where to find me." The intercom cut out with a click. I stood there, staring at the speaker, debating whether to leave. But something in the tone of his voice, it wasn't threatening. It sounded familiar, like a teacher you half remember from childhood. So I went. I followed the signs past the therapy ward, past the locked pharmacy door, until I found the entrance marked Ward C, authorized personnel only. A thick chain wrapped around the handles, but one link was broken, bent outward like someone had forced their way in. When I pushed the doors open, the air changed. It was colder, thicker somehow, and the smell, burnt metal and flowers, was stronger. The lights overhead flickered in slow rhythm, buzzing like flies. The hallway stretched long and narrow, the kind of endless corridor you only see in dreams. I walked, flashlights sweeping across the walls. Every few steps I passed an old patient room. Some doors were sealed, others open, but all of them had mirrors on the far walls. Every mirror had been covered with a sheet of cracked glass, like someone tried to stop the reflections from forming. That's when the whispering started. It wasn't words at first, just movement. A rhythm. Then, faintly, something like breathing through the speakers overhead. You remember, don't you? I spun around, beam trembling. Who said that? No reply. Just static from the nearest intercom unit. Red light blinking. I should have turned back, but I didn't. I kept walking until I reached the last door at the end of the corridor. A plaque read C1. I reached for the handle, and that's when I saw it. An ID badge, lying on the floor. Faded plastic, cracked photo. My photo. Name Evan Richards. Role patient. Admit date 09/14/1999. My chest went hollow. I laughed, too loudly, like it was a joke. Someone was messing with me. Had to be. But when I turned the badge over, there was something scrawled in pen on the back. Don't answer him. I dropped it and stumbled back, pulse hammering. The intercom popped again, louder this time. Evan, you're not supposed to be here yet. The voice was Dr. Lang's, calm but strained now, like he was disappointed. Who are you? I shouted. What is this place? You know, he said gently. You just keep forgetting. And then the lights went out. For a few seconds, the darkness was complete. Thick, suffocating. I could hear something moving just ahead, the soft scrape of shoes. I aimed the flashlight and caught a figure standing down the hall. A man in a lab coat back turned. Dr. Lang. He didn't move. Hey, I called again. When he finally turned, the beam hit his face, and there wasn't one. Just a blank, smooth surface like wax. I stumbled back, tripped over the doorframe, dropped the flashlight. When I scrambled to grab it, he was gone. But the intercom clicked on again, and this time the voice was different. Quieter. Female. Evan, it's okay. You're safe now. For a second, I thought I recognized it. A name bubbled up. Mara. But my head pounded the moment I thought it. Like my own mind rejected it. The hallway started to hum. Every light flickered in unison, syncing with my heartbeat. The mirrors began to vibrate, reflecting flashes that weren't me. Hands trembling. Blood on the floor. A woman screaming. I couldn't tell what was memory and what wasn't. I bolted, running back toward the main hall. As I reached the door, the intercom burst with static so loud it shook the air, and through the distortion came one final message. Go back to the control room. We need to talk about her. When I reached the control room, every monitor showed Ward C, every hallway, every mirror, and in each reflection I saw myself, standing there, only not moving. One by one, each reflection turned its head toward the camera and smiled. When I checked the security footage from last night, I saw myself walk past the camera. The problem is, I was already sitting in that room watching it happen. That's how I knew something was wrong with time in Ravenswood. The nights didn't move forward, they folded back on themselves. I'd sit there in the control room, watching the screens, and sometimes I'd see versions of me, different clothes, different posture. One time, I was smiling. I tried telling myself it was a glitch. Cameras looped, footage corrupted. But the timestamp in the corner wasn't from the past. It was 5 minutes into the future. And when that version of me turned toward the camera and waved, like he knew I was watching, I finally believed what I'd been trying not to. This place was remembering me. I didn't clock in that night. Didn't even bother pretending this was a job anymore. The logbook was back on the desk, though I swear it had vanished the night before. This time, the last entry wasn't in my handwriting. It said, replacement on duty, observe, don't interfere, no signature. Just that single word at the bottom, Lang. I grabbed my flashlight and went to patrol anyway. Not because I wanted to, because I had to know if the other me was still walking around. The hallways were quieter than usual. The smell of burnt metal was gone, replaced by something sweet and rotten, like spoiled fruit. Every light flickered slower now, like the building itself was breathing. Halfway down the west corridor, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A small door, paint peeling off, marked Observation Room 3. It was slightly open. Inside, monitors lined the walls, all showing Ward C from different angles. And in one of them, I saw a man standing over a hospital bed, whispering. When I leaned closer, the image sharpened, and I realized the man was me. But there was someone else in the bed, a woman, pale, motionless, hair spilling over her face. The way I whispered her name, Mara, sent a pulse through my chest, like my heart was trying to remember something it shouldn't. Then the feed glitched. The woman's eyes snapped open, staring straight into the camera. I stumbled back, slamming the monitor off. I couldn't breathe. My head was spinning. The room around me seemed to shift. Walls stretching, colors dulling. When I stepped outside, the hallway was different. The wallpaper was newer, the lights brighter, the scent of antiseptic sharp in the air. And down the hall, 2 nurses walked past. Actual people, talking, laughing. I froze. One of them glanced right through me. The other brushed past, cold and solid. I wasn't invisible, I was somewhere else. Ravenswood wasn't showing me ghosts. It was showing me the past. I followed the nurses quietly until they turned into a patient ward. Through the cracked door, I saw nameplates on the beds. Most were blurred with age, but one was clear. Evan Richards, admitted, September 1999. My legs gave out. I felt the world tilt sideways, the sound of rushing air filling my head. That was my name, my date. But why? How? And then, from behind me, "You shouldn't be here, Evan." It was Dr. Lang. I turned and saw him standing under the flickering light, lab coat crisp white this time, not the grimy one from before. His face still looked wrong, but clearer now, half-formed like memory rebuilding itself. "Am I dead?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Not yet. What is this? Why do I see?" "Because you never left," he interrupted softly. "You keep coming back to finish what you started." My pulse thundered. "Finish what?" He stepped closer, voice lowering. "You told me she slipped, but the blood spatter didn't match a fall, did it?" My stomach twisted. I shook my head. No, that's not... "You said you loved her," Lang murmured. "Then why did you hit her?" I backed away, covering my ears. His words weren't real. They couldn't be, but the memories came anyway. Mara's voice pleading, my hand gripping the tray, the flash of glass, the scream. I remember shouting that it wasn't me, that the reflection in the glass had moved first. That's what I told them. That's what I told myself. Lang's voice echoed through the hall, now overlapping with the intercom, distorted, multiplied. "You replaced her. You replaced yourself." The lights exploded. I fell, ears ringing as the hallway filled with overlapping figures, versions of me walking, shouting, banging on doors. Dozens of me, looping the same patrols, same words, same fears. The replacements. Every one of them turned toward me at once. "You shouldn't have come back." I ran, through the corridors, past the rooms that weren't rooms anymore, until I burst back into the control area. The monitors all showed the same thing. Me, sitting there, staring at the screens, expression blank. I reached for the power switch, desperate to cut everything off. But before I could, the intercom hissed, and Mara's voice, soft, trembling, broke through. "Evan, it wasn't your fault. For a second, I almost believed her. I whispered, "Then why won't you leave me alone?" Static answered. Then a sound, like something dragging across concrete. I turned slowly. In the reflection of the monitor behind me, someone was standing. A woman, pale, motionless, hair spilling over her face. "Mara," I breathed. She lifted her head just enough to show a smile that didn't belong to her anymore. "You were the replacement." Evan, the light snapped off, and somewhere in the dark, dozens of my own voices whispered the same word. Over and over. "Replacement! Replacement! Replacement!" They said I've been dead for 20 years. But if that's true, why does the clock still punch my time card every night at 7 p.m? That's how the final recording starts. The last one I ever made. I don't remember hitting record, but the red light on the camera was already blinking when I sat down in the control room. The monitors hummed softly behind me, each one showing the same empty hallway. Ward C. No more loops, no more doubles, just stillness. I told myself I wasn't coming back after this. One more shift, one last chance to fix what I broke, to cover the glass again, like Lang used to say. The place was quieter than ever. Even the static had stopped. I almost missed it. The sound meant someone was listening. I started talking to the camera like it was a person. Maybe I was hoping someone would find this tape. Maybe I just wanted to hear my own voice one last time. If anyone's watching this, I wasn't lying. I didn't kill her on purpose. My voice cracked halfway through. I laughed it off, but it came out wrong. Too high, too tight. I rubbed my face, felt the stubble scraping against my palms. It was growing back, but it shouldn't have. Time didn't move here. It only replayed. I turned the camera toward the monitors, pointing at Ward C. The hallway there looked different now. Newer, cleaner, as if time itself was trying to reset the scene. At the end of the corridor, one door stood open. C1I grabbed my flashlight, radio and crowbar and started walking. My boots echoed in that hollow way that only happens when a building's holding its breath. As I passed the old break room, something caught my eye. The logbook. It was open again, a new line written in neat slanted handwriting. Final shift. Seal the mirrors. Confess. No signature. But the ink was still wet. By the time I reached Ward C, the smell was back, the one that made me dizzy. Burnt metal and flowers. I stepped through the double doors and froze. The corridor was spotless. Bright white tiles, fresh paint, medical carts lining the walls. The past had rebuilt itself, and at the far end, standing by room C1, was Dr. Lang. His lab coat gleamed under the lights. This time his face was clear, older, tired, but human. "You came back," he said softly. "I need to fix it," I told him. My voice was trembling. "I need to make it right," Lang nodded slowly. "And you already know what you have to do." I did. Inside room C1, the bed was neatly made. The sheets were white, spotless. But beneath the pillow, I could see the edge of something metallic. The mirror. The one I'd broken years ago. The one that had started all this. I remembered now. The night Mara died. We'd argued in that very room. I'd accused her of lying, of betraying me with Lang. She said I wasn't well, that she was trying to help. I threw the tray first. The glass shattered, and she slipped, hit the edge of the bedpost. The sound, God, that sound never stopped. After that, the reflection started whispering. I told the doctors it wasn't me, that the thing in the mirror made me do it. They didn't believe me. I lifted the mirror carefully, shards rattling like teeth. My reflection stared back, pale and shaking. "It wasn't you," I whispered. "It wasn't your fault." Behind me, Lang sighed. "That's what you always say." I turned, and he was gone. Just like that. No footsteps, no door creak. The intercom crackled to life. "Evan," Mara's voice said softly, almost kind. "You can stop now. You don't have to keep doing this." Tears burned behind my eyes. "I killed you," I said. "You shouldn't forgive me. Then why do you keep coming back?" I didn't answer. I just lifted the mirror and nailed the shards back into the frame, sealing the cracks with duct tape. Every hammer strike echoed through the building like a heartbeat. When I finished, I turned to the camera. "It's done," I said. "No more reflections. No more loops." The monitors behind me began to flicker. Each one showed Ward C. Same angle, same shot, but something had changed. The hallway wasn't empty anymore. In every feed, I was standing there. Not one version, dozens, hundreds, all of them staring at me from inside the screens, frozen in silence. Some smiled, some didn't. One looked exactly like I did now. Same clothes, same tired face. He stepped closer to the camera and placed his hand against the glass. The surface of my monitor bulged outward. I stumbled back. "No," I whispered. No. The glass cracked. A hairline fracture spread across the screen like a spider web. Then another, then dozens. Every monitor began to splinter, the sound deafening. The reflections behind the glass screamed, not in fear but in laughter. I turned to run, but the hallway ahead of me wasn't the control room anymore. It was Ward C endless, pulsing with light. The floor was wet beneath my boots, red. In the distance, someone stood beside room C1. Long hair, white uniform. "Mara?" I whispered. She turned, and I saw that same soft smile. "You covered the glass again," she said. "Good. Now we can rest." I tried to move toward her, but the floor rippled like water, swallowing the light. The air was heavy, pressing in from every side. "Rest," she repeated, voice breaking into static. "Rest, Evan." Then everything went black. The camera feed ends there, just static, flickering faintly. But if you watch closely, right before the tape cuts, you can see one final image reflected in the broken monitor. Evan, sitting in the control room again, smiling. A time card clicks in the background. Shift started, 7:00 p.m. Story number 2. They told me the mall closed in '98. So why do I hear footsteps every night at 2:13? And before you ask, no, I'm not imagining things. I have proof. I just can't show it to you anymore, not after what happened last week. They told me the mall was empty, but the thing about silence is, you start to hear what it's hiding. I wasn't supposed to take this job. Everyone told me to stay away from Hanley Plaza, Detroit's biggest retail corpse. It closed in 1998 after some incident they never fully explained, but bills don't care about rumors. When the demolition company said they'd pay double for night coverage, I said yes before asking questions. The place was enormous. 4 floors of dust, shattered glass, and dead storefronts. You could still see faded sale posters clinging to the windows, frozen in time. Grand opening, 1984. The parking lot looked like a battlefield. Light poles bent sideways, asphalt cracked open by roots. Inside the small site office, I met Mr. Hanley. I thought he was just another contractor. He didn't shake my hand, didn't even look up from the forms. His voice sounded like it came from behind a wall. "Marcus Lang, correct?" "Yeah. Night shift only, right?" "Night only," he confirmed. 6 nights a week. Your patrol. Keep vagrants out. No photos, no live streams. Understand?" That last line threw me. Live streams? He finally looked up. His eyes were grey, like the colour had been scrubbed out. "People like to make things viral these days," he said. "Let's keep this job quiet." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were my badge, keycard, and a laminated sheet titled Night Rules. I laughed at first. They read like something out of a creepypasta. Don't use the service elevator after 2 a.m. If you hear laughter in the food court, do not respond. Never look directly at the carousel mirrors. Don't talk to anyone who isn't on the schedule. Keep the lights on in Sector C, even if the power flickers. I looked up, expecting Hanley to grin. He didn't. Do you expect me to take these seriously? I asked. You'll understand if you last the week. Something about the way he said if instead of when stuck with me. My first night started just before midnight. The mall loomed against the skyline like a hollow carcass. Every window boarded, every entrance sealed except the one I had a key for. When I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Old perfume, wet concrete, and dust that tasted metallic. The power grid was half dead, running on backup generators. The overhead lights buzzed weakly, leaving long shadows that swayed when I moved. My boots echoed in the empty halls, one step, then another and another. I started humming just to fill the void. That's when I noticed something strange. Every time I hummed, the echo didn't match. It came half a beat late, and sometimes continued after I'd stopped. Hello? The sound carried down the corridor and died in the distance. No reply. Still, it didn't feel right. At 1:42 a.m., I reached the food court. Broken tables, chairs stacked in heaps, grease stains fossilized into the tiles. I flicked my flashlight across the space and saw something I didn't expect. One of the menu boards still glowed faintly. Pizzaland, 2.99 specials. The power to that section was supposed to be cut decades ago. I went behind the counter to check the wiring, but all the outlets were dead. The light shouldn't have been on. The intercom above me crackled once, just static. I ignored it and moved on. Then came the faintest sound. Laughter. Children. It drifted from somewhere near the carousel on the lower level, distant but real, the kind of laughter that rises and falls like waves. I froze. My hand went straight to the rule sheet in my pocket. If you hear laughter in the food court, do not respond. My throat went dry. I wanted to radio Hanley, but the signal only hissed back. So I waited. 1 minute, 2. The laughter faded, replaced by the hum of the lights overhead. Just my imagination, I muttered. Old pipes, maybe, except there were no pipes near the carousel. By 2:07 a.m., I was back near the service corridor. My shift should have been halfway done, and nothing else had happened. I told myself the rules were just there to scare rookies. I even laughed out loud, though it sounded hollow in that space. Still, curiosity got the better of me. Rule number 1 said not to use the service elevator after 2 a.m., so at 2:10 I walked over to it. The button was covered in grime. I pressed it anyway. The light flickered red, out of order. But the doors opened. A cold draft hit my face. The inside of the elevator smelled like salt water and rust. Someone had carved something into the wall with a key or knife. Stay upstairs. I took a step inside. The floor groaned under my weight. Then, from the corner of the shaft, a drop of water fell and hit my shoe. Except it wasn't water. It was warm. I backed out fast, pressing the button again to close the doors. They didn't move. The red light blinked irregularly, almost like it was pulsing. That was enough adventure for one night. I turned around and started walking back toward the atrium. That's when I noticed the lights had stopped flickering. Everything was still. Too still. The kind of silence that buzzes in your ears. I shone my flashlight ahead, sweeping across shuttered storefronts, cracked tiles, torn banners. Nothing. Then in the beam, something glimmered. A candle. Sitting perfectly upright on the counter, inside the old Toyland store. Its flame steady, not flickering. I froze. The mall had no power, no heat, no draft. Nothing should have been able to burn in here. I stepped closer, pressing my hand to the glass. The candlelight reflected faintly, and behind it, in the dark, I thought I saw movement. A small hand. I blinked and it was gone. The candle burned on, bright and new. "We shouldn't be here," I whispered before catching myself. "We." I swallowed hard and forced a laugh. Guess I'm more tired than I thought. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was awake in the mall with me. And as I turned to leave, the intercom crackled again, this time with a soft, breathy voice. "Good night, Marcus." I spun around. The candle flame flickered out. And just like that, the mall went dark. I wasn't supposed to hear anything that night. That's what I keep telling myself. It was supposed to be silent. Dead, like the rest of this place. But silence doesn't echo. The candle from Toyland had burned itself down to a wax puddle by the time I made another round. I didn't report it. I should have. But something in me didn't want to talk to Mr. Hanley again. The way he watched me when he handed over those rules, like he already knew I wouldn't follow them, it stuck in my head. So, I pocketed the half-melted candle stub, locked the Toyland gate, and told myself I'd imagined the faint music. But the thing about this mall is, it remembers noise. By 1:45 a.m., I was sitting in the food court, drinking cold coffee from my thermos. The neon Pizza World sign across from me buzzed like a dying fly. Wind slipped through the cracked skylight, carrying the faintest whistle. For a while it almost felt peaceful. Then I heard it, soft and distant, like a child's giggle. I froze. At first I told myself it was the air ducts, or maybe rats. Detroit's full of both. But then the laughter came again, higher pitched this time, followed by another. 2 voices, maybe 3. I remembered the rule. If you hear laughter in the food court, do not respond. My thumb brushed the paper folded in my jacket pocket. I laughed quietly to myself, because really, how stupid was that? Don't respond to laughter. What was I supposed to do? Laugh back? Still, I felt my throat tighten. I called out anyway. "Hey, anyone there?" The laughter stopped. I don't know how long I sat listening to the nothing that followed, but every shadow around me felt heavier. The air seemed thicker, like the mall itself was holding its breath. I decided to check the security cameras. The feed ran off an old CRT monitor in the back office, dusty and half flickering. The food court camera showed nothing, just my empty chair. But when I leaned closer, I noticed movement at the edge of the frame, a blur near Toyland. Someone, something, was standing just beyond the glass gate. I blinked, leaned closer. The screen rolled for a second, static biting across it. When it cleared, the figure was gone. I didn't breathe until I heard my radio crackle. "Marcus." It was Hanley's voice, flat, unbothered. "Yeah? Stay away from Toyland tonight." A beat of silence, then, before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at the radio like it might explain itself. It didn't. By 2:03, I was pacing the corridors again, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. I told myself I'd just check the locks, make sure the place was secure, and head back. Simple. But when I passed the carousel, I couldn't help glancing at those mirrors. The rule said not to look directly at them, but rules lose meaning when you're alone long enough. I turned the flashlight toward the glass panels, letting the beams slide over the painted horses, the cracked bulbs, the mirrors smeared with dust. My reflection wavered, distorted by years of grime. Then another reflection blinked back at me, not mine, a pale face, smiling. Behind me, I spun around. Nothing there, just the carousel, still and silent. I told myself it was the beam bouncing weird, or maybe a trick of the glass. But when I looked back, the face was closer. It wasn't mimicking me, it was watching me. I backed away fast, nearly tripping over a fallen sign. My flashlight sputtered once, then died completely. In the dark, I could still see the faintest shimmer of that smile on the glass, like light trapped under the surface. I didn't run. Not yet. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to give the mall the satisfaction. Instead, I stumbled back to the security office and locked the door. The monitors glowed dimly, static flickering over half the feeds. In the Toyland camera, the candle was lit again. No one had gone in. At least, not anyone I could see. The laughter started again, faint through the walls, closer this time, circling the office like the mall itself was breathing in whispers. I pressed my hands against my ears, muttering to myself that it was all in my head, that I'd been awake too long. But the radio hissed again, and Hanley's voice whispered through the static, barely audible, like he was standing inside the wire. "You shouldn't have looked." The laughter stopped instantly. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was waiting. Turned off the monitors and sat in the dark until dawn seeped. Through the cracked skylights, when the light hit the food court, I saw footprints, small ones, trailing wet across the tiles. They led from Toyland to where I'd been sitting. I didn't want to go back. After that night, I told myself I'd quit. I even drafted the text to Hanley, thumb hovering over send. But something stopped me, something small and stupid. The paycheck hadn't cleared yet. Or maybe that's just the excuse I tell myself. Because deep down, I think I wanted to know what I saw. When I came back for my second shift, the mall was colder. The kind of cold that feels personal, like the air itself resents you. The lights in the atrium flickered in slow rhythm, humming like they were breathing. I clocked in and checked the cameras. Toyland's feed was dark. The carousel feed, half static, half motion blur, like something was spinning, even though I knew it wasn't plugged in. I told myself I'd prove it, just prove it wasn't real. The carousel sat in the middle of the entertainment wing, surrounded by cracked tiles and half-collapsed banners that still read Grand Opening, 1989. Every footstep echoed like I was walking through someone else's memory. The air smelled like old dust and faint engine oil. When my flashlight landed on the mirrors, they seemed cleaner than before, polished. My reflection stared back, except for one mirror, the largest one. That one didn't show me at all. It showed the carousel horses. Every one of them turned toward me, eyes wide, their painted grins chipped into sneers. I took a step closer. My breath fogged the glass. That's when I saw it. In the mirror's surface, behind the horses, a figure was standing, still, watching. It looked like me. I turned around. Nothing. Empty carousel, empty hall, only the hum of dying lights. When I looked back, the reflection hadn't moved, but it was smiling now, teeth too white, too straight. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the flashlight. It rolled, its beam spinning across the horses. For a split second, they all seemed to twitch, heads turning slightly, like they were following the light. I stumbled back and hit something solid. My heart nearly stopped until I realized it was one of the support poles. Except, the pole was warm. Something wet dripped from above. I looked up. The fiberglass horse above me had tears painted on its face. Only now they were real. Thick, dark streaks running down its muzzle. Blood. I ran. I don't remember getting back to the security office, just the sound of my boots on tile and the frantic wheeze in my chest. The monitors buzzed, snowed with static. Only one feed showed anything. Carousel cam, the horses were still. Every one of them, except the mirrors. Each mirror showed something different. Not reflections, scenes. In one, I saw the food court filled with people, shoppers, kids, employees, all frozen mid-motion, like a paused video from a decade ago. In another, Toyland was lit up, toys moving on their own. The shelves stacked neatly as if it were still open for business. And in the last mirror feed, I saw myself, sitting in the security office, staring at the cameras. Except, I wasn't wearing my uniform. I was wearing the old mall mascot costume, the one that's been locked in storage since the 90s. My radio crackled. "Marcus," Hanley said, but his voice wasn't calm this time. It was shaking. "You looked in the mirrors again, didn't you?" I don't know what's happening," I stammered. "What's wrong with this place?" "Listen to me carefully," he said, low and quick. "The mall remembers its workers. It keeps them." "What?" The static swallowed his answer. When it cleared, the line was dead. That's when I noticed something on the wall. The rule sheet, the one Hanley gave me, was different. The ink had bled, the paper yellowed, but the text had changed. Rule number 3 used to say, "Never look directly at the carousel mirrors." Now it said, "If you see your reflection move, leave immediately." I tore it down, shaking, and that's when I realized the door to the office was open. I hadn't opened it. Something shuffled in the hall. Soft, dragging steps. I turned the flashlight toward the door. The beam landed on scuffed shoes, old and soaked, like they'd been walking through water, then legs, then a torso, and then my own face. The reflection from the mirror was standing in front of me, skin pale and smooth like wax. Its eyes were black, no whites at all. It tilted its head like it was studying me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then it whispered in my voice, flat, mechanical. "Shifts over." The lights went out. When they came back, the reflection was gone. So was the flashlight. But in its place, lying on the floor where it stood, was a cracked carousel horse's eye. Plastic, but wet, glistening like something alive. I don't remember leaving. I just remember the mall lights humming behind me as I drove away, my hands gripping the wheel so tight they hurt. When I finally looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, I swear it smiled first. I didn't go back the next night. At least, that's what I told myself. But when I woke up, the mall keys were already in my pocket, and the security badge was clipped to my shirt. I don't even remember putting them there. My phone said it was 11:57 p.m., 3 minutes before my shift started. The car drove itself, or maybe my mind did. The streets of Detroit were empty, coated in a thin film of ice, reflecting neon lights that didn't belong to any working store. By the time I reached the mall gates, I wasn't even surprised to see the lights already on inside. Someone had clocked me in. The moment I stepped into the atrium, the smell hit me, something sweet, rotting and oddly familiar, like old popcorn soaked in bleach. The loudspeakers crackled overhead. Then came that music, the jingle, the one I'd only heard on security tapes. Bright, cheery, horribly out of place. Meet your friends at Hanley Mall, where the smiles never end. I froze. Hanley Mall. That's what this place was called before it shut down. And that name, Hanley, same as my supervisor. He'd never mentioned that before. The tune repeated, warped, slower now, like a record dying mid-spin. Then I saw it. A figure standing under the broken escalator, 7 feet tall, hunched, wearing something that looked like an animal costume, bright red and blue fur, a cracked plastic smile, oversized gloves, the mall's old mascot, Happy Harry the Beaver. I'd seen the costume once before, years ago. It was supposed to have been destroyed. The mascot tilted its head at me, just like the reflection had. "Hanley?" I whispered into the radio. "There's someone here. A costume. Is that you?" Static. Then, "Go to the basement, Marcus." It wasn't a command. It was a plea. The figure didn't move as I passed it, but its head followed me. Every squeak of its joints echoed down the corridor, like the air was amplifying the sound just for me. The basement access door was behind the old arcade. The padlock was broken. Inside, the stairwell reeked of mold and old coolant. I aimed my flashlight down, the beam disappearing into black. Halfway down, I heard footsteps following me, slow, deliberate, mimicking mine. When I stopped, they stopped. When I started again, they waited, one beat longer, before continuing. At the bottom was the maintenance corridor, low ceiling, flickering bulbs, water dripping from overhead pipes. My light caught something scrawled on the concrete in black marker. "Keep him smiling," dozens of times, over and over. Then I saw the doors, heavy steel ones, unmarked, lining both sides of the hall. Each had a small observation window. Inside the first room was a chair, a single wooden chair facing the wall. The second room, another chair, and another. But the third door was open. Inside was the mascot costume, or what was left of it. The fur was peeled away, revealing a mechanical skeleton underneath. Wires dangled from the arms, twitching faintly. Its jaw was still moving, open, close, open, close, like it was chewing invisible words. I took a step closer. That's when the jaw stopped, and a voice came from inside the costume's head. "Marcus," it rasped. "You're late." I stumbled back, slamming into the wall. I don't know who you are," I stammered. "You're not real." The mascot's hand twitched, pointing toward the corner of the room. There, half buried under a tarp, was a faded file box. I pulled it free, my fingers shaking. Inside were employee records, photographs, maintenance logs, all from 1991, and one photo stopped my breath. A group of mall staff posing in front of the carousel, smiling, all except one, standing in the back, his face half turned, wearing the same uniform I was wearing now. Name tag, Marcus Hanley. Security, Hanley. My supervisor. My name. Meet your friends at Hanley Mall, where the smiles never end. The voice was wrong, distorted. It was my voice now. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head. The laughter from the food court echoed, high-pitched, looping, mechanical. The mirrors in the carousel shimmered, each one showing a different version of me. One screaming, one laughing, one watching. Hanley knelt beside me, his tone gentle. "You looked into the mirrors. You took his reflection. That's how it works, Marcus." He needed a new guard. He placed something cold and heavy in my hands, the mascot's head. Happy Harry. Its glassy eyes stared straight into me. My reflection moved first. "Smile," it whispered. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't stop. The corners of my mouth stretched, muscles aching, skin splitting at the sides. I tried to scream, but the sound came out as laughter. Laughter that didn't belong to me. I stumbled backward into the carousel, its motion pulling me in. The mirrors warped, the reflections merging until there was only one face, mine, painted red and blue, frozen in a permanent grin. When the lights went out, I thought it was over. But this morning I woke up again. In the security office, the cameras were on. Feed 1, food court, empty. Feed 2, atrium, empty. Feed 3, carousel, turning, slowly, and standing beside it, was me. The monitor flickered. For a split second, I saw something else. A group of people walking into the mall. A new crew, maintenance workers maybe, one of them holding a clipboard. I recognized the name stitched into his vest. Hanley. The radio crackled. "Welcome to your first night, Marcus," my own voice said. "Don't forget the rules." I looked down at the laminated sheet on the desk. 7 rules, fresh ink. But the last one was different again. Rule number 7. When your reflection smiles first, your shift begins. I stared into the monitor. My reflection on the screen smiled. First. The loudspeakers came alive. "Keep him smiling, Marcus. Keep him smiling." Story number 3, they say the night shift is quiet, but they never tell you why. And if you think I'm crazy for following the rules, then tell me why the fryer still sizzles when it's turned off, or why we're not supposed to look at the customer in window 3 after 2:17 am. No, really, tell me. Because I stopped following the rules last night, and now the cameras won't stop showing my face, even when I'm not there. You ever notice how every fast food place feels? The same at night, same buzzing lights, same smell of oil that never quite washes off your hands, same empty parking lot stretching into nothing. But there's something about this place, something that doesn't stop when we close. My name's Miles. I work the midnight shift at a burger joint off Highway 17. You've probably driven past it. Big yellow M that flickers like a dying heartbeat. I don't know why I'm recording this, I guess. I just need someone to hear it. Someone who doesn't already know what's going on. They told me it's normal to feel paranoid when you're alone that late. That the shadows play tricks. But shadows don't breathe, do they? When I first got the job, my manager, Donna, handed me this laminated sheet. The Midnight Operations Manual. It wasn't like the normal safety stuff though. It had rules. Weird rules. Things like, if you hear the fryers turn on by themselves, don't check them. Never speak to the drive-through voice after 2 a.m. Keep the lobby lights dim. Bright light attracts attention. And never, ever check the back freezer twice. I laughed. Thought it was some initiation prank for new hires. Donna didn't laugh. She just said, you follow the rules, you keep your job. You break them, you call maintenance. That was 4 weeks ago. Or 3. Actually, no, it's been 5. Sorry, I've been losing track lately. The first few nights were quiet. Just me, the hum of the soda machine, and the sound of rain on the roof. I liked the solitude. It was better than hearing my roommates fight or my phone buzz with calls I didn't want to answer. But around my second week, I started noticing little things, like the clock on the wall freezing at 2:17 a.m. for exactly 60 seconds before jumping forward, or the headset crackling with static, even when all the orders were done. Donna said it was just interference, but then, one night, I heard whispering through the comms. Someone breathing, slow and steady between channels. That was the same night my coworker Eli quit. Or maybe he didn't quit. I never actually saw him leave. They told me to finish the shift alone that night. Said he'd texted in his resignation. But when I went to clock out, his apron was still hanging on the hook. His car was still in the lot. The police came the next morning. They said there were no footprints in the mud. No signs anyone left at all. After that, I stopped asking questions. I still follow the rules, mostly out of habit now. Even the dumb ones. Like last night. Around 1:45 a.m., the fryer started sizzling on its own. I heard the oil bubbling, popping, the smell filling the room. I looked. It was cold, unplugged, still sizzling. I didn't touch it, just turned away and said out loud, I'm not checking that. The sound stopped immediately. I've also stopped looking directly at the security cameras. The feed glitches whenever I do. Sometimes the monitors show me walking in from the back door, even when I'm sitting at the counter watching it happen. Donna says the system's old, but when I checked the timestamp on one of the recordings, it said October 17th, 2019. That's 3 years ago. Same layout, same kitchen, same person in uniform, same me. Anyway, that's not what this recording's about. Tonight it's the manual again. Someone rewrote part of it. I swear. When I clocked in, there were new lines printed at the bottom in red ink. If you hear cleaning after closing, leave it be. Do not investigate the restroom lights. Lock the front door twice. The first one isn't real. I didn't write that. Donna says she didn't either. I thought it might have been a prank until I heard it. Around 12:30, I was wiping down the counters. The place was empty, but from the back, near the mop sink, I heard someone scrubbing, not like a sound from the pipes. Real, rhythmic scrubbing, slow, circular motions. I thought maybe Donna came in early, so I said, "Hey, I got it covered back here." The sound stopped, and then, after a few seconds, something whispered, "You missed a spot." I dropped the rag and ran out front. Checked every corner, every door, nothing. But the floor was wet. When I told Donna this morning, she sighed and said, "Yeah, that's Rule 6. I told her there was no Rule 6. She said, "There is now." She was serious, completely calm. Then she took out her pen, walked to the manual, and wrote a new line beneath the others. "If you hear your name after midnight, pretend you didn't." So, yeah, that's my life now. I flip burgers for ghosts or whatever these things are, and I try not to break the rules. People online keep saying I should quit, but you don't understand. When I tried once, I came home to find a delivery bag sitting on my porch. No address, no receipt, just a note that said, "Your shift's not over." Anyway, it's almost 2 a.m. again. And there's that crackle in the headset. It always happens right before something changes. I keep telling myself it's interference, but part of me wonders what would happen if I just answered it. No, I won't. Not tonight. Sound of headset static growing louder. Wait, someone just said my name. He looks up at the drive-through monitor. A faint light flickers in the rain outside. He hesitates, whispering into the recorder. This is probably nothing, just another glitch. Static surges. But if you're hearing this and I don't upload again, it started at window 3. I don't know why I turned toward the drive-through window. Habit maybe, or instinct. That same static that had been buzzing in my headset. It was coming from outside now, seeping through the glass like a swarm of bees caught in a jar. I stood there for a long time, staring into the dark lot beyond window 3. Rain smeared the glass, each drop dragging neon reflections down into warped streaks. The speaker box out there blinked faintly. A red light, pulsing slow, like it was breathing. Then, through the static, a voice whispered, "Order ready for pickup." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I froze. We hadn't had an order in nearly 2 hours. I took off the headset, but the voice didn't stop. It was still coming, muffled now, filtered through the drive-through intercom like someone speaking from underwater. Order ready for pickup. Miles, that last part. No one was supposed to know my name. I tried to keep calm, told myself it was Donna messing with me. She has the override channel, so I pressed the talk button and said, "Not funny, Donna. You almost gave me a heart attack." The response came instantly. "Donna's not here." I dropped the headset. It hit the counter with a hollow clack and went silent. For the next few minutes, I just stood there, listening. Nothing but the rain again. But then the lights flickered. Once, twice, and the security cameras rebooted on their own. Every screen flashed white, then black. When the feed stabilized, something had changed. The timestamp on all 6 cameras now read 2:01 a.m., but the clock above the fryer said 1:42. I swear I checked it 3 times. One of the monitors, the one showing the drive-through lane, and was still glitching. The picture kept rolling like old VHS tape static. But between the distortions, I caught glimpses of something standing near the speaker box. At first I thought it was a trick of the rain. Then I realized the figure wasn't wet. It just stood there, perfectly still, facing the window. I thought about locking myself in the office, but the rules said nothing about that. The rules only said, don't speak to the drive-through voice after 2 a.m. So if I didn't speak, I was safe, right? I turned off the headset, unplugged the base, even pulled the wall cable. But when I looked back up, the monitor still showed the red light blinking, and the figure had moved closer. Now it was standing directly beneath the awning, still not wet, still watching. The weirdest part? When I blinked, it blinked too, at the exact same rhythm. I know that doesn't sound scary written down, but when you see someone moving in perfect sync with you, it's not a coincidence. It's like they're waiting for you to move again. I turned away, counted 10 seconds, looked back, gone. I should have left then, but my brain kept whispering the same thought. You didn't lock the window. I don't even remember walking toward it. One moment I was standing by the counter, the next my hand was reaching for the latch. The cold air leaked in through the small gap where the seal didn't close all the way. That's when I smelled it, like burnt oil and wet metal, a smell that didn't belong to rain or fries or cleaning chemicals. And then I heard the headset, even though I'd unplugged it, crackle back to life. Order ready. Pick up at window 3, I whispered. I'm not opening it. Then we'll come in. Every bulb in the ceiling went out at once. The entire restaurant plunged into black. The fryers clicked off. The drink machine fizzed once, then silence. The only sound was the rain and the faint tap, tap, tap coming from the drive-through glass. I grabbed my phone to use as a flashlight, but the screen refused to turn on. Dead. The tapping grew faster, then it stopped. And from somewhere behind me, inside the restaurant, a voice whispered through the dark, "You missed a spot." That phrase again, the one from last night. I spun around and caught the faintest shimmer of movement, a reflection on the metal counter sliding out of frame. My breath fogged the air in front of me. It was freezing now, like someone had opened the freezer door wide, but the freezer door was closed. I could see it from where I stood. Still, something inside was scratching, slow and deliberate, as if it was tracing letters in frost. I backed toward the lobby. My foot hit something soft. Eli's apron, the same one he left hanging, except now it was wet. I made it to the front door, tried to unlock it, but the latch jammed. I remembered the line from the new rules: lock the front door twice. The first one isn't real. I'd only locked it once. I fumbled with the keys, but the metal kept slipping in my shaking hands. Behind me, the headset whispered one final phrase: clear, crisp, calm, shift complete. The door finally gave way. I ran into the rain. I didn't stop until I reached my car. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice before getting them in the ignition. As the engine started, I looked back through the windshield. The restaurant was dark, except for that one faint red light at window 3, blinking, steady, patient, and just before I drove off, the speaker crackled one more time, loud enough for me to hear through the storm. See you tomorrow night, Miles. I didn't go home that night. I drove around until sunrise, circling the empty streets of our small town like a ghost with nowhere to haunt. The rain followed me, heavy, relentless, drumming on the roof until I couldn't tell if the shaking in my hands was from fear or caffeine. When the first light hit the sky, I finally parked outside my apartment complex and just sat there. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that red light blinking at window 3. Every time I blinked, I swore it blinked back. By the time I dragged myself inside, I'd convinced myself it had to be exhaustion, stress, a trick of light and too much overtime. But the smell followed me in. That burnt oil and metal smell, clinging to my hoodie like the place had marked me. I didn't tell anyone, not my manager, not Donna, especially not corporate. They already thought I was unstable after Eli quit. They said I'd been hearing things, taking too many breaks, showing signs of sleep deprivation. The funny thing is, they weren't wrong. That night, I told myself I wasn't going back. But when 11:45 p.m. rolled around, I was standing in uniform at the staff door, key in hand, pretending I had a choice. Maybe it's the paycheck, maybe it's pride, or maybe, and I hate saying this, maybe I just wanted to see it again. When I unlocked the back door, the smell hit first. Fryer oil, bleach, something sweet beneath it, like syrup left too long on a hot surface. The lights were already on. I didn't turn them on. Someone had cleaned. Counters were spotless. Floors gleamed. Even the sink was dry, except there was one thing off. The camera monitor above the register was already running, looping the previous night's footage. At least, that's what I thought. It took me a full minute to notice the timestamp. 2:11 a.m. And there I was on screen, standing at the drive-through window, staring out into the dark. I felt my stomach knot up. That couldn't be live footage. It was me from yesterday. But then the version of me on the monitor turned its head, slowly, and stared directly at the camera. I stumbled back. The stool hit the counter with a clang, echoing through the restaurant. I looked up again, expecting the feed to cut or glitch. It didn't. The me on screen smiled, and then he raised his hand and waved. I tore the plug from the wall. The monitor went black, except the reflection didn't vanish. For a second, I could still see him. My own outline, burned faintly into the screen like a ghost image. I tried to laugh it off, but it came out sounding like a sob. Around 1:50 a.m., I started hearing the soft hum of the freezer again, that familiar mechanical rumble. Only this time, there was a rhythm to it, like breathing. I kept repeating to myself, just 15 minutes till 2. Just make it to 2. I thought of the rule. Don't speak to the drive-through voice after 2 a.m., but no one ever said what happens before that. I turned toward the window. The parking lot was empty. Rain still fell, but lighter now, almost gentle. Then I saw it, in the glass of the drive-through window, my reflection. Except my reflection wasn't moving like me. I leaned forward. It leaned back. I tilted my head. It stayed still, and when I whispered, "Who are you?" it smiled. I stumbled away, grabbed the mop handle like it could protect me. Behind me, the headset buzzed faintly. I didn't touch it. Not again. But the reflection, or whatever it was, lifted its hand and pointed behind me. I turned around. The freezer door was open. The light inside flickered, swinging shadows across the floor. Something glistened on the tiles. Water! No, oil. The same slick trail leading from the freezer to the counter, as if something had been dragged. I followed it with my eyes until it disappeared under the prep table. I crouched, slowly. There was a shoe under there, Eli's shoe, still wet. My heart slammed against my ribs. When I stood, the camera monitor flickered back to life. on its own. Static hissed, and through the blur I saw the drive-through again. This time, two figures stood under the awning. One was the reflection. The other, Eli. He looked pale, soaked, his eyes completely black in the low light. And when the speaker crackled, his voice came through. "You didn't lock it twice, Miles." I threw the headset across the room, but it didn't matter. His voice was in my head now, repeating, layered, distorted, like a recording looping itself. Shift complete. Order ready. Lock it twice. The cameras blinked again. The reflection on the monitor leaned close, almost pressing its face against the lens. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. The same scar on the eyebrow, the same chipped tooth, the same exhausted eyes. But there was one difference. His uniform tag didn't say Miles. It said Eli. The power went out. The screen faded to black. And from somewhere inside the freezer came a faint, steady knock. One beat every few seconds. I think that's when I realized something I'd been refusing to admit. Eli never quit. He never left. And whatever I've been seeing, whatever's been answering me through that drive-through, it knows my name because it's wearing my face. I don't remember driving home that night. One moment, I was standing in front of that dead monitor, staring at the black screen like it could swallow me whole. And the next, I was sitting in my car outside my apartment. The clock on the dashboard said 2 a.m. That didn't make sense. I'd just checked the time inside the restaurant. It had been 2:47. Somewhere between the fryer and the driver's seat, I lost 47 minutes. The first thing I did was look in the mirror. My reflection looked normal, tired, pale, hollow-eyed, sure. But mine. Then, as I reached for the ignition, I saw it. A grease stain on my collar that hadn't been there before. A small red tag sewn above my name patch. It didn't say Miles. It said Eli. That was 3 nights ago. Or maybe it was last night. I'm not sure anymore. Every time I try to sleep, I hear the headset crackle. Faint, distant, like a voice trying to crawl through static. Sometimes I even answer it before realizing there's no one on the other end. I've stopped checking my phone. The clock keeps changing every time I look at it. Last night, I think, I got a call from the manager, Donna. She said the security system had been acting strange. Cameras looping footage. Recordings saving files with future timestamps. Dates that haven't happened yet. She sounded nervous. Kept asking if I'd been editing anything. If I'd gone into the system. I told her no. She didn't believe me. "Come in tonight," she said. "We need to review it together." I didn't want to go, but she made it sound like I already had. When I arrived, the restaurant looked different. Too clean, too perfect. Every chair was aligned, every counter wiped spotless. The fryers glistened under the fluorescence like they'd never been used. And there, taped above the sink, was the rule sheet. Only it wasn't the same one. The old rules were gone. New ones had been typed in their place. Clock out by 2 a.m. Check the freezer twice. If Donna speaks to you after closing, she isn't Donna. I backed away slowly, feeling my heart pound. Then I heard the office door open. "Hey, Miles," Donna said, cheerful and calm. Her voice was normal, too normal. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I tried to tell her about the new rule sheet, but when I pointed to it, it was gone. Just a blank tile wall. She said she wanted to show me something. Led me into the manager's office where the monitors flickered with security footage. Every screen showed the same angle. The drive-through window, rain outside, empty parking lot, until, in one feed, I saw us walk in, Her leading, me following. Only that couldn't be right. We were standing there, watching it. Then the me on screen turned and looked straight into the camera. "You're late," it said. Donna gasped. I think she tried to speak, but her voice came out warped, glitching, like a sound file skipping. Her image on the monitor distorted too, faces overlapping, one frame showing her smiling, the next with her mouth open far too wide. I stepped back. The lights in the office dimmed to a sickly yellow, then the drive-through speaker crackled to life. "Clock out, Miles. You've been here too long." The monitors began flashing timestamps. Tomorrow's date, next week's, next month's. Each frame showed me at the counter, headset on, taking orders from invisible customers. In one clip, I was mopping blood off the floor. In another, I was unlocking the freezer door and helping someone, or something, crawl out. Donna collapsed. When I turned to her, her face was pale, eyes wide. She whispered, "It's looping. Don't you get it? It's the same night over and over." And then, before I could move, the power went out again. I used my phone light to find my way out, stumbling through the dark toward the front counter. The air was colder now, sharp and wet, like breathing through ice. The drive-through headset buzzed once, then, faintly, "Order up." I froze. The speaker light glowed red, just like before. The monitor screens in the office flickered back on. Only one camera still worked. It showed the parking lot. And outside, under the yellow street lamp, was me, standing in the rain, headset on, smiling. I dropped my phone. The light from the screen spun across the floor, catching on something near the register, a laminated tag. It was a name tag, grease-stained, burnt around the edges. It said, Miles. The headset voice came again, calm, almost kind. "Clock out, Eli. It's checkout time." And for the first time, I didn't correct it, because somewhere deep down, I realized something horrible. Maybe I was never Miles at all. Maybe I'd been working someone else's shift this whole time. They always said the midnight shift changes you, but no one told me it could replace you. I came back tonight because I had to. I don't even remember deciding. My body just knew the way. The roads blurred by in a grey haze, like I'd driven them 1,000 times before. Maybe I have. When I parked, the restaurant was already lit from the inside, but I hadn't clocked in yet, and through the fogged window, I saw someone moving, wearing my uniform. That was the first time I felt it fully. The cold, sinking certainty that the loop didn't just trap me, it duplicated me. I unlocked the back door. The smell of fryer oil and bleach hit hard, sharp as a blade. My reflection in the stainless steel looked different. Tighter smile, darker eyes. On the counter sat 2 name tags, Eli and Miles, mine and his, but I couldn't remember which one I'd worn first. The headset crackled. "Order up." My stomach turned. That voice, I knew it. Not the tone, but the rhythm, the breathing between words. It was me. I pressed the talk button. "Who is this?" Static. Then, "The one who stayed." The words echoed through every speaker in the restaurant, overlapping like feedback. The lights flickered. The fryer hissed, empty but bubbling, as though something invisible cooked beneath the oil. The freezer door was open again, and the air spilling out was thick, foggy, alive. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. Every window showed the parking lot repeating itself like a looped film reel. Rain falling, street lamp humming, my car parked, and my silhouette inside it, head tilted, smiling. I think I started talking to the camera at that point, not to record evidence, just to prove I existed. Okay, I whispered, staring at the lens. My name is... And then I froze, because I couldn't finish the sentence. It wasn't that I forgot. It was that the name felt wrong, like wearing someone else's skin. The camera light blinked red. Recording. And from the monitor behind me, a voice whispered, perfectly matching my tone. My name is Eli. I spun around, and there I was again, on the screen. But this time, it wasn't a reflection. He was standing behind me in the feed. I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, he'd moved closer. His face was mine, but older somehow. Grease-stained. Eyes sunken deep into grey circles. His smile never wavered. You didn't clock out, he said. Someone had to stay. I ran, pushed through the kitchen, toward the back exit. Every step echoed. Too loud, like someone else was running beside me. I reached the door and slammed my key into the lock. It didn't turn. Through the reflection on the metal surface, I saw him walking up behind me, slow, calm, and then, softly, "You're not supposed to leave, Eli." His hand touched my shoulder, freezing cold. I turned, ready to fight, but the second I did, he vanished. The room was empty again. That's when the intercom clicked on, all on its own. Every speaker in the place hissed alive. 100 voices, my voice, whispering, chanting, overlapping in perfect sync. Shift complete. Order ready. Clock out. The lights dimmed to a deep red glow. The fryer oil shimmered, and for the first time I saw shapes moving inside it. Limbs, faces, uniforms, all of them me. I dropped to my knees. Something inside me broke, or maybe finally remembered. I wasn't the new guy. I wasn't the survivor. I was the copy. The one they made to keep the place running when the real Eli vanished into the freezer. The rules weren't warnings. They were containment protocols. I don't know how long I sat there. The static faded into quiet. The hum of the freezer slowed until it was almost gentle, like breathing again. When I stood, I was calm, empty, ready. The drive-through speaker blinked red. "Welcome back, Miles." I smiled, because now I understood. The loop wasn't punishment. It was maintenance. Someone always has to work the midnight shift. I walked to the counter, adjusted my name tag, the one that said Miles, and pressed the register key. The headset fit perfectly over my ears. Outside, headlights pulled into the lot. A new car. A new hire, probably. I took a deep breath, straightened my uniform, and said into the mic, "Welcome to Burger Box. Can I take your order? Story number." When I joined the volunteer fire department, I thought the rules were a joke, like initiation stuff. But then I broke rule no. 3, and I swear to God, I watched my own captain burn alive without fire. He was screaming, but nothing touched him. And the worst part? The others just watched, like it was normal. You ever hear a man scream while his shadow burns before he does? No? Then you've never been to Dry Creek, Texas. You ever drive so far out into the desert that your radio just gives up? No static, no music, just silence. Like even sound doesn't bother living there anymore. That's where Dry Creek starts. A town so empty, even the road signs look like they want to leave. When I first got there, I told myself it was just a fresh start. New job, new people, new me. That's what I said out loud. But really, I was just running from the last fire I couldn't put out. The town sits in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields of sunburnt grass and windmills that don't spin anymore. You'd think a place like that wouldn't even need a fire department. But when I walked into Station 19, peeling red paint, windows fogged from old smoke, it was buzzing like the heart of something still alive. 5 guys sat around a folding table, laughing over cold coffee, until I walked in, then they stopped. The man at the head of the table stood up, grey beard, weathered face, and eyes that looked like he hadn't seen real sleep in years. "Carter?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I said, trying to sound like I'd done this before. "Captain Brooks," he said. "We heard about your background." I froze. I didn't know what they'd heard, or what they thought they'd heard. Brooks nodded toward the wall. "Rules are posted over there. We keep things simple here. You follow those, you'll last." That's when I noticed the laminated sheet pinned to a corkboard. 7 bullet points in faded black marker. The 7 rules of Dry Creek Fire Department. They looked harmless, dumb even. Rule number 1, always answer the call. Rule number 2, never go alone. Rule number 3, don't answer a call with no name. Rule number 4, don't look in mirrors after a night fire. Rule number 5, don't let them touch your gear. Rule number 6, if you smell smoke but see no fire, run. Rule number 7, redacted. The last line was blacked out, thick ink, like someone had tried to erase a word they didn't want remembered. I chuckled. "What's this, some kind of hazing thing?" Nobody laughed. Not even the kid in the back, who looked barely 20. Brooks said, "They're not jokes. You'll understand soon enough." That night I was given a bunk upstairs, just me, an old mattress, and a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed like a dying wasp. The firehouse smelled like diesel and sweat, but under that, something else, like burned wood that never cooled down. I should have slept, but I couldn't. I kept staring at that list, thinking about how serious everyone looked when they read it. The blacked out rule bothered me the most. It wasn't just hidden, it was erased. Around midnight, the silence of the station broke. Someone was moving downstairs, boots on concrete. I grabbed my jacket and headed down. The main bay was dim, only one light over the trucks. Captain Brooks stood by the board, hands behind his back, staring at the rules like they were scripture. He didn't turn when he spoke. "Can't sleep?" "Not used to the quiet," I said. "Back in Dallas, the sirens never stopped." He nodded slowly. "Quiet can be louder than any siren, son." I waited for him to laugh. He didn't. After a while, he said, "You read the rules?" "Yeah. Kinda weird, but sure." "Good. Memorize them before the next call." I shrugged. "Shouldn't be hard. I've followed plenty of rules before." That got his attention. He turned, eyes narrowing just a bit. "And how'd that work out for you?" I looked away. It could have been worse. He studied me for a moment, then said quietly, "In this town, we follow those rules because we learned what happens when we don't. The fire here, it doesn't just burn wood." That made me laugh before I could stop myself. "Right, it burns souls, huh?" He didn't laugh back. He walked to the board, tapped the blacked out line. "You want to know what the last rule says?" "Sure," I said. "You can't," he replied. "Not yet. Why not?" "Because you only learn it when you survive it." The way he said "when you survive it" hit wrong, like he wasn't sure I would. He left me standing there, staring at that sheet of rules glowing under the single flickering light. I thought about my old team, about the call I didn't answer in time, about the fire that moved too fast, too smart, like it knew where we'd run. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the station alarm. It was faint at first, then louder, sharper, mechanical, but almost alive. My first call in Dry Creek. The others ran for the truck, but as I reached for my gear, my hand hesitated. The radio crackled to life. A dispatcher's voice, female, calm, practiced. "Station 19, Barnfire, Route 6, no name given." Brooks froze in the doorway. Everyone looked at him. He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "You remember rule number 3, Carter?" I nodded slowly. Yeah, don't answer a call with no name. He gave a grim smile. Good. Then pray it's not for you. As the truck roared to life and the siren wailed into the dawn, I felt something twist in my gut. Something cold. Because for the briefest second between the bursts of radio static, I could have sworn I heard my own voice whisper back through the speaker. Eli Carter. Barnfire, Route 6. The siren tore through the quiet like a scream that didn't belong to the living. Out here, even sound carried differently. Thin, stretched, desperate. The road to Route 6 cut through endless fields of wheat gone brittle from drought. The headlights carved tunnels through the dust, and every time the beam hit a fence post, it looked like a figure waiting just beyond the glass. I sat in the back of the engine, clutching my helmet tighter than I should have. Nobody spoke. Not the captain, not the kid they called Webb, not even Gus, the oldest of the crew, whose face looked carved from ash. It wasn't silence like calm. It was silence like they'd all been here before. Finally, I broke it. So, this call's got no name, right? Webb shifted uncomfortably. Sometimes dispatch gets it wrong. Captain Brooks didn't look back. Sometimes, he said flatly, it's not dispatch. The engine hit a bump, and my stomach did too. We crested a small hill, and there it was, a barn in the distance, glowing faint orange, like a heartbeat pulsing through smoke. But something about it was off. The fire wasn't spreading. It was staying still. Gasoline fire? I asked. Brooks didn't answer. He killed the siren, but left the engine idling. The field was dead silent except for the clicking of metal cooling in the truck. Stay sharp, he said finally. Nobody goes in until I say. We stepped out. The air was thick with heat, but smelled wrong, sweet and metallic, like blood drying on iron. The fire wasn't roaring or crackling. It just moved, slow and steady, like it was breathing. Brooks raised his flashlight and called out. Anyone inside? No answer, just the soft hiss of burning hay. Then, something. A faint sound. Not from inside the barn, from the radio. A whisper. My name, Eli Carter. Come in. The voice was mine. I froze. My throat went dry. Captain, did you hear that? He didn't even turn. Keep your radio off local. They'll use your name if you let them. They? I asked. He ignored me and motioned for Gus and Webb to flank the barn. I followed, trying not to look too shaken, but the hair on my arms stood up, like I'd stepped into static. The barn door was half open, and through it I could see the glow of the fire. It wasn't touching the walls or the beams. It just hovered, flickering like a living thing caught in a jar. Jesus, Webb whispered. It's burning the air. Then came the smell, sharp, acrid, almost electric. And under that, something else, something human. Brooks's voice cut through. Nobody crosses the threshold, not unless we know what's burning. I took a step forward anyway, instinct kicking in. Old training. Firemen don't just watch a blaze. We fight it. The captain's hand shot out, grabbing my shoulder. His grip was steel. Rule no 3, he said, eyes locked on mine. Don't answer a call with no name. I'm not answering, I said. I'm doing my job. He didn't let go. That's what the last one said. Then we heard it. The scream. It came from inside the barn. A man's voice, hoarse, terrified. Help, please! I lunged forward, but Brooks yanked me back. Stay put. He's alive in there. Listen, he barked. The scream came again, but now it wasn't quite right. The words were stretched, wrong in the mouth, echoing too deep for the size of the barn. And then my name again. Eli. Please help me! My body went cold. It was my voice again, coming from inside the flames. Gus muttered something under his breath and crossed himself. The captain stepped forward, eyes hard. Back in the truck, now! Nobody argued. As we reversed down the dirt road, the barn still stood, glowing like an ember that refused to die. The radio crackled again, static and whispers intertwined. "Rule 7, a voice said softly. "You don't survive it twice." Brooks snapped the radio off. His jaw was clenched tight enough to crack teeth. I wanted to ask questions, but nobody else spoke the whole ride back. Even Webb kept staring out the window like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. When we got back to the station, the air felt heavier. Brooks parked the truck, stepped out and faced me. "You got lucky tonight," he said. "Most first-timers don't." "Lucky?" I laughed, though it came out shaky. "We didn't even fight a fire." He gave a bitter half smile. "That's what you think." "What was in there?" I asked. "Who was screaming?" He started to walk away, then paused. "You remember what I told you last night? The fire here doesn't just burn wood. Then what does it burn?" He looked at me. "Names." And then he left me alone in that cold, humming station, staring at the empty bunks and the list of rules pinned to the wall. The black ink over rule number 7 seemed darker than before. I could still hear my own voice echoing through the static in my head. Eli Carter. Barnfire, Route 6, somewhere out there. Something had called my name, and next time, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop myself from answering. They say you never really sleep in a firehouse. You just wait for the next call. But that night, I didn't sleep because I was afraid of hearing my own voice again. The bunk room was still. I could hear Webb snoring softly 2 beds over, and the hum of the vending machine in the hall. The lights from the parking lot outside slipped through the blinds, striping the room in pale gold. I should have felt safe, but the longer I stared at the ceiling, the more the silence started to feel watched. I turned over and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror across the room, the one nailed to the locker door. For a split second, I swear I saw movement. My reflection blinked a moment later than I did. I sat up, heartbeat climbing into my throat. "You're just tired," I muttered to myself. "Stress, drought, heat." But the reflection, my reflection, tilted its head as if it was listening. Then Webb groaned in his sleep, turning over, and when I looked back, the mirror was empty. Just the dim shape of the bunk room, lit by the faint red emergency bulb. No, mean I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, watching the empty glass stare back at me. Morning came, but the feeling didn't fade. Gus was brewing coffee in the kitchen, humming a gospel tune so low it sounded like mourning. Brooks sat at the long table, half reading a report, half not. "Sleep well?" he asked without looking up. "Not really," I said. "Had weird dreams," he grunted. "Dreams are good. Means they still want to talk to you," I froze. "Who?" He folded the report neatly and finally looked up. "Whatever's in that barn." I waited for the punchline. "It never came." "You're serious?" He sipped his coffee. "You think Dry Creek used to be this quiet for no reason? Do you think fires out here act normal?" He nodded toward the rules board pinned beside the engine bay. "Rule 4, Carter. Read it again." I glanced at it. Rule Chapter 4. Never look too long at what's burning. Brooks stood. "They say flame remembers faces. If it sees yours too clearly, it keeps it." He walked away, leaving me staring at my own reflection in the chrome of the coffee pot, warped and wobbly, but undeniably smiling back when I wasn't. Later that day, the station got a call. Not for a fire, for a search. An old rancher named Clyde went missing near the irrigation fields south of town. No flames, no smoke, no reason to be afraid. Just a routine job. Except when we got there, I saw something I'll never forget. The irrigation trench was bone dry, just cracked mud and reeds. And there, at the bottom, was Clyde's pickup. Engine off, doors locked, windshield shattered from inside. No sign of him. But on the driver's side mirror, Smeared in ash were handprints, black, oily, as if burned into the glass. Clyde didn't burn anything, Webb said. There's no fire for miles. Not yet, Gus muttered. Brooks ordered us to sweep the area, but the air around that truck was wrong. Heat shimmered over the dirt even though the sun was fading. I knelt near the mirror and looked closer. For a heartbeat, I saw my own eyes staring back from inside the truck, not the reflection of me kneeling there. The eyes were behind the glass. Watching, I stumbled backward. The door creaked open on its own, and a voice whispered from the darkness inside the cab. Eli, you didn't listen. I turned, breath sharp and panicked, but no one else reacted. They didn't hear it. That night back at the firehouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that something from that field had followed me home. Every shiny surface seemed to flicker to breathe. I covered the mirror in my locker with my jacket. Around 2 a.m. I heard Webb whispering in his sleep again. Only, he wasn't using his own voice. He was using mine. Don't go deeper. The same phrase I'd heard during our first descent into the barn's glow. I woke him, shaking his shoulder. Webb, hey, wake up! His eyes flew open, white, unfocused. You shouldn't have looked, he whispered, still half dreaming. Now it knows your face. Then he went limp, fast asleep again. I sat there in the dark, every nerve on fire. When I couldn't take it anymore, I went to the washroom to splash my face. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, making everything flicker in that pale green tint that turns the world sickly. I leaned toward the mirror and froze. My reflection wasn't alone. Behind me stood a figure, faint and smoke grey, its hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the mirror again, there was no reflection at all. Just a black void where I should have been. And in that void, written in fog, were 3 words, Rule 7 burns. The bulb overhead burst, and I staggered backward, heart slamming in my chest. The next morning, Brooks didn't look surprised when he saw the broken light. He just said quietly, "Once it shows you that message, you can't leave town." "Why?" I demanded. He met my eyes. "Because the fire sees you now, and it doesn't like to lose what it finds." When the alarm went off that night, I swear it didn't sound right. It wasn't the usual sharp electronic screech. It warbled, almost human, like someone gasping through static. By the time I reached the dispatch radio, the others were already awake, tense, staring at the speakers. A voice crackled through the line. "Station 7, copy. It's spreading. Help me." The problem was, it was Webb's voice. But Webb was right there beside me. He looked pale as chalk, shaking his head. That's not me." We stood there frozen, the hiss of the radio filling the silence like a lung inhaling. Then the voice came again, louder this time, more desperate. "Brooks, please, send Eli. He's the only one it wants." The captain turned slowly toward me. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw real fear in his eyes. We drove out into the black stretch of desert south of Dry Creek, sirens cutting through the dead quiet. The address given by dispatch didn't exist, just County Road 19, mile marker 13. But the coordinates led us to an abandoned church, half swallowed by sand and mesquite. Its roof had collapsed inward long ago. The sign out front still read, "Christ the Shepherd's House," though the letters "her" were missing, leaving it to say, "Christ the SP's house." The closer we got, the hotter it felt. No fire visible, but the air itself shimmered, like we were standing too close to a furnace. Brooks parked the truck and turned to me. "You stay in the cab." "Like hell," I said. He didn't argue. That worried me more than anything. Gus and Webb geared up, flashlights cutting across the dirt. I followed a few steps behind, every nerve on edge. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burnt wood and something older, like wet ashes and rust. The pews were scattered, Bibles torn open as if flung by wind or hands. And at the far end, near what used to be the altar, the floor glowed faintly orange, like embers beneath the boards. Brooks knelt beside them, brushing off soot. His gloved hand trembled. "Same markings," he muttered. "It's starting again." "What markings?" I asked. He didn't answer. Then the radio on his shoulder crackled. Webb's voice again pleading, "It's under the floor. Don't let Eli near it." Everyone froze. Webb, the real one, backed away, shaking his head violently. "I'm not saying that. I'm not—" Before he could finish, the boards beneath Brooks buckled. Heat rushed out like breath. We stumbled back as flame burst upward. Not red or orange, but white, pure and silent, like light with no sound. And from within that flame came a shape. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't human, but it pretended to be. Its face was mine. My voice echoed from its burning mouth. "Eli," it said, "you broke the rule." My knees buckled. "What are you?" "You looked too long," the others shouted, tried to douse it, but their hoses spat only steam. The thing moved between the jets like smoke, whispering through the air. Webb screamed as it touched his arm. His gear melted through like wax. I dragged him back toward the exit. Brooks was yelling orders, but his voice distorted, bending around the creature's hiss. We got outside. The church was burning from inside out. No wind, no sound, just white flame and light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Then, through the roar, I heard it again on the radio, Webb's voice. Calm this time. Rule 6, don't answer when your own name calls. I dropped the radio. It melted into the dirt, plastic hissing like tar. Back at the firehouse, we didn't talk. Not for hours. Webb's arm was wrapped in gauze that wouldn't stop smoking. Gus sat rocking slightly, whispering prayers under his breath. Brooks locked himself in his office. I sat alone in the bay, staring at the trucks gleaming under the fluorescent light. For a moment, I saw my reflection in the windshield, split in half. One side burned, one side clean. That's when the phone on the wall rang. A single, shrill tone. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. "Station 7, I said, voice shaking, and my own voice replied, "You survived the 6th. It's time for the 7th. Click. The line went dead. I turned, realizing the laminated paper, the 7 rules, was missing from the board. Only a single burned edge remained, still smoking. I didn't tell the others what the voice said, because deep down, I already knew what the 7th rule must be. Something you couldn't write down, something you had to burn to learn. You ever smell smoke when there's no fire? That's how it started, not the roaring kind of smoke, just that faint sting of ash that gets into your nose and won't leave. I woke up choking on it. The firehouse was dark, too dark. The generator hummed somewhere below, but the lights were out. I could hear dripping, slow, rhythmic, steady like a pulse. I stumbled down the hall, flashlight trembling in my hand. Brooks, Webb, anyone? No answer. The laminated list of the 7 rules was gone. In its place was a black handprint on the wall, still warm. That's when I realized something. The air wasn't filled with smoke. It was filled with breath, like the whole building was exhaling around me. I followed the sound of the dripping to the equipment bay. Every helmet, every axe, every oxygen tank, melted, not burned, melted. The truck's chrome reflected everything like liquid glass. In the middle of the floor sat Webb, staring blankly ahead. His bandaged arm was gone. Nothing left but a scorched shoulder and an expression that looked half dead, half relieved. "Webb," I whispered. He didn't move. Then, in the reflection of the fire truck, he did. The mirrored Webb turned to look at me, eyes hollow, mouth twitching upward into a smile. "You should have left," he said through the glass. I took a step back, shaking. "This isn't real. You're dead. You're—" The reflection interrupted, voice sharper now. "You never told them what happened at Junction 9. My stomach dropped. The words clawed into my skull like sparks, because he was right. I hadn't told them. I hadn't told anyone. A year ago, in Junction 9, my old fire crew had gone into a warehouse fire. 7 of us entered. Only 1 came out, me. They said it was an explosion, faulty tanks. But that's not what happened. There was a sound in that fire, a voice, just like the one in the radio. It whispered to me through the smoke. Leave them. You can live. And I did. I left them. I told the report I was blown clear by the blast. I told myself I didn't have a choice. But the truth, I heard them screaming for help, and I ran. Now, as I stood in Dry Creek's firehouse, that same voice crept back through the heat, soft and hungry. Rule 7, Eli. Do you remember? I turned in a slow circle. No, I don't know what you want from me. Confession. The word echoed through the bay, rattling the metal shelves, bending the light. Every reflection started to ripple like boiling water. Then, all at once, they moved. Dozens of versions of me stared out from the truck, the oxygen tanks, the window glass, each one burned, twisted, mouths opening in silent accusation. One by one, they began whispering, "You left them. You left us. You left me." The fire alarm went off on its own. Red lights flashed across the walls, bleeding into the reflections. Brooks burst from his office, shouting, "Get out! The building's heating from inside." But I couldn't move. The flames were already crawling across the ceiling, not spreading from a source, but forming words. They spelled, "Rule 7. I screamed, "What is it? What's the 7th rule?" Brooks grabbed my arm, yanking me toward the exit. "You don't want to know, Eli." The doors burst open, but instead of night air, there was only light, white, endless fire. Brooks froze, staring into it. "Oh God, it's back." The voice rose again, louder, layered, as if hundreds spoke at once. Rule 7. The fire remembers. The next moments blur in my mind. I remember Brooks burning, silently like paper in sunlight. I remember Webb's empty shell standing up, walking straight into the blaze, smiling. And then, nothing. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. The firehouse was intact. No scorch marks, no melted tools. Brooks's office door still closed. For a second, I thought maybe I'd dreamed it all. Then I saw the new sign on the wall, freshly laminated, freshly nailed. The 7 rules. All 7 were printed this time. No blacked out line. The last one read, Rule No. 7. When the fire remembers you, stay where you are. I touched the page. It was warm. In the truck bay mirror, my reflection smiled back at me, except I wasn't smiling. And behind my reflection stood Webb, Brooks, and 6 others I hadn't seen in a year, watching from inside the glass, faces charred, eyes glowing. "Welcome home, Eli," they whispered. The overhead siren began to wail. Another call, another fire, another chance to stay where I was. They told me the ocean was empty, that nothing lived below 7 miles. But I've heard it breathe. I've felt it watching. And if I disappear after telling you this, just know the water wasn't silent. It never was. They told me the deep was quiet. That's the first lie I ever believed. Because the moment we crossed 6 miles down, I heard it. Something like breathing. Something that wasn't the ocean. And it hasn't stopped since. I need you to understand this part clearly, before anything else I say later starts to sound insane. People think of submarines as machines of silence, sealed steel tubes slipping through darkness. And yes, silence is part of it, but it's the wrong kind. It's not peaceful. It's the kind of silence that sharpens every creak of the hull until you swear it's bones breaking. The kind of silence where your heartbeat feels loud enough to wake whatever might be sleeping out there. The descent was supposed to be routine. That's what I kept telling myself as I strapped in. I'd made dives before, never this deep, but enough to know the drill. Still, when the hatch sealed shut and the world above was cut away, I felt it. That old pressure in my chest that had nothing to do with depth. Captain Rourke noticed it too, though he didn't say much. He never did. He was the kind of man who led through silence, letting you fill in the blanks with your own fear. Routine run, he muttered, flipping switches with steady hands. We're not here to find monsters, just readings. Remember that. It should have comforted me. It didn't. We dropped. Mile 1, 2, 3. At that depth, sunlight still glimmers faintly, a blue haze like the ghost of day. But once we passed 4 miles, the light was gone for good. Blackness folded in around us, thick and absolute. That's when I started thinking about the pressure. 7 tons pressing on every square inch of steel. A fortress, they call it. But all I could hear was metal groaning. Every sound felt wrong. I logged the descent into the operator's journal, keeping my voice even, mechanical. That's what they trained us for. But beneath the steady notes, my thoughts wouldn't stop. What if something out there hears us? At mile 5, the sonar blinked. Just once, a little blip, nothing significant. I logged it as equipment calibration. Rourke gave me a look, sharp, suspicious, but didn't argue. That was his way. Trust the system, not the man. By mile 6, I felt it. The deep isn't just water, it's weight. It presses against your skin, your ribs, your thoughts. I swear I could hear my own skull ringing with it. That was when I noticed the rhythm. Tap. Pause. Tap. Like something knocking against the hull. I didn't say anything. I wasn't ready to hear the captain call it imagination. Still, I wrote it in the log. Small, neat letters, hidden between routine numbers. If you read it now, you'd think it was a misprint. Maybe that's what I wanted. A secret no one else would catch. Rourke kept his eyes forward, steady on the controls. I envied him. He looked carved from stone, unmoved by the abyss. Sometimes I wondered if he really didn't hear it, or if he just refused to admit he did. We hit the Hadal zone at mile 7. No one speaks much at that point. There's a ritual silence, the kind you keep when crossing into a graveyard. The water outside was ink, shifting only when our floodlights pierced it. Every particle drifted like dust in a cathedral. Beautiful, if you forget how hostile it all is. That's when sonar blinked again. Not once, several times. Blips moving in a slow arc across the screen. Too big for fish, too erratic for debris. I leaned forward, trying not to sound alarmed. Sonar's picking something up, I said. My voice cracked on the last word. Rourke's hand landed heavy on my shoulder. Equipment fault. It happens in deep zones. Don't log it. But I said don't log it. His tone cut like a blade. I swallowed the words. Obedience was survival down here. Still, I couldn't ignore it. The shapes weren't static. They shifted, curved, almost like circling. Each time the screen refreshed, the blips were closer. I wanted to ask him again, but he was staring at the viewport, jaw clenched. For the first time, he looked uneasy. That was all the confirmation I needed. We sat in silence, minutes stretching long as years. Only the hum of the engines and the faint hiss of air circulation. Then, faint but clear, another sound. Not sonar, not machinery. A low, dragging exhale. I froze. My hand tightened on the journal, pen trembling. My instinct was to record it, but something inside me whispered not to, like writing it down would make it real, binding. Rourke must have sensed me listening. Focus on the mission, he muttered. You hear nothing, you see nothing. But I did. I heard it again. Longer this time. Like lungs straining against water that should have been impossible to breathe. And in that moment, I realized something. We weren't alone. The rest of the descent blurred. I wrote coordinates, depth, pressure, all routine, all meaningless. Beneath each word, fear dripped like ink. The sonar flickered every few minutes, but I stopped mentioning it. Rourke didn't want the truth written down, and maybe I didn't either. When we leveled out at trench floor, the sub steadied. Metal groans softened. The blackness outside felt thicker, as if pressing its face to our glass. I dared a glance at the viewport, half expecting to see something, I don't know what. An eye, a shadow, anything to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. There was nothing. Only drifting silt, slow as snowfall. I almost believed him then, that it was all stress, equipment error, imagination. Almost. But as I closed the journal, I felt it again. Not sound this time. Movement. The faintest vibration against my chair, travelling through the steel. Something brushed the sub, massive and deliberate. I looked at Rourke. His eyes were fixed on the viewport, unblinking. He didn't say a word, but his hands gripped the controls hard enough that his knuckles turned white. That was when I knew. He felt it too. We stayed at depth for hours, running scans, logging readings, pretending everything was normal. But beneath it all, a tension coiled tight. Rourke avoided my eyes. I avoided asking questions. That was our unspoken deal. Don't acknowledge what we both knew. Still, the sounds returned. Faint tapping, long exhales. Once, even what I swear was a laugh, distorted, dragged through water. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it seeped through the steel itself. When I finally risked another note in the log, I wrote only 4 words. It knows we're here. We began ascent protocol late into the shift. Engines roared softly, lifting us back toward a world with air and light. Relief should have settled in, but it didn't. Because as the sub tilted upward, sonar blinked again. Not behind us, above, waiting. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred, but Rourke snapped it off with a flick of his hand. The monitor went black. "Forget it," he said. His voice was low, almost a growl. "For your own sake." I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but his expression silenced me. And maybe he was right. Maybe some truth should stay buried. But the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, breathing, watching. And deep down, I knew the ascent wouldn't save us. Whatever was out there, it had already found us. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was realizing the silence wasn't empty at all. Something was in it, hiding, breathing, waiting for me to listen. I didn't sleep that first night. None of us were supposed to, not during trench operations, but I remember how the hours dragged on until they felt like years. The lights inside the sub hummed faintly, painting everything in a dim yellow that only made the shadows deeper. Rourke kept to his cabin, trusting me with night watch. Maybe he thought I could handle it. Maybe he wanted to see if I'd crack. The truth is, I already had. The tapping started again, softer this time. Not random, a pattern. Tap, pause, tap, tap. I leaned forward, pressing my ear to the cold steel. It was faint, like something brushing fingers across the hull from the outside. My rational mind screamed it was metal stress, the groaning of steel under pressure. But the rhythm was too deliberate, too human. I told myself not to write it down, but my hand was already moving, scrawling the words into the operator's journal. Tapping. 0214. Pattern. I stared at the ink until it blurred. I almost tore the page out, but no, I left it. A record. Proof. Because some part of me already knew that later, Rourke would deny it happened. Hours crawled by. I checked gauges, recalibrated sonar, sipped water from a steel flask that tasted faintly of rust. Each task should have grounded me, but instead, each sound of the machinery seemed off. Louder, sharper, almost mimicking something alive, and then it came again. Not tapping, breathing, slow, deep, dragging, as if something vast pressed its mouth against the hull, inhaling the stale air inside. My throat tightened. I froze, pen hovering above the journal. I waited for it again. One breath, 2, 3. The hairs on my arms rose. This wasn't imagination. It couldn't be. I stumbled to the captain's quarters, rapping my knuckles against the door. "Rourke, sir, are you awake?" A pause. Then his voice gravelly with irritation. "What is it? You don't hear that?" "Hear what?" "The breathing through the hull." Another pause. Then slowly. "Go back to your station, operator. The deep will play tricks on you if you let it. Don't." The door stayed shut. I stood there a long time staring at the sealed cabin. Either he was lying to me, or I was lying to myself. The next few shifts blurred together. Morning and night don't exist that far down. Just cycles of duty, dim lamps, and the endless hum of engines. But my body knew when it was dark. Somehow the whispers were louder in the false nights. Yes, whispers. I can't pretend they were just taps anymore. I swear I heard voices. Sometimes they sounded like Rourke, muffled, calling from the far end of the sub when I knew he was asleep. Other times, it was stranger. Words I couldn't understand. Guttural and stretched like they weren't meant for human lungs. I stopped writing those down. Some things, even I didn't want proof of. On the third night, I caught Rourke watching me. He stood in the control room doorway, eyes hard, arms folded. "You've been jumpy," he said. "There's something out there." "There's nothing out there." His voice was sharp, cutting. "You keep saying it, you'll start believing it. That's how men lose themselves down here," I wanted to argue. Instead, I stared at the sonar, where faint static flickered across the screen. No shapes this time, just snow. "Routine run," he repeated, softer now. "Don't make it something it isn't." But when he left, I thought I heard him mutter under his breath, "Not again." The radio call came the following shift. "Surface check-in. Protocol. Surface to Abyss 1. Report status." Rourke answered first, his tone clipped. "All systems stable. Routine operations." I leaned close, snatching the mic. "Request clarification on sonar anomalies." Static filled the channel. Then a crackle, a voice I half recognized. "Anomalies. Negative. Abyss 1. No interference logged topside." I opened my mouth to respond when the signal cut. Abrupt, mid-sentence. Not static, not fade, just silence. I tapped the console, adjusted dials, flipped switches. Nothing. The channel was gone. Rourke's hand slammed down on the mic, ripping it from mine. His face was pale, eyes sharp. "Do not deviate from protocol again." "But they..." He leaned closer. His whisper was colder than the water outside. "They didn't cut out. Something cut them off. And if you ever say that over radio again, we'll both be dead men." After that, sleep was impossible. Even when exhaustion dragged at my skull, I couldn't close my eyes, because every time I did, I saw the black water pressing against the glass, and behind it, movement. Slow, watching. The whispers grew worse. I began to recognize words in them. My name, over and over, drawn out, distorted, like a rope pulling me deeper. One night, I pressed my ear so hard to the hull I thought the steel would split my skull. And I swear, God help me, I heard someone breathing with me, perfectly in sync, as if waiting for me to exhale so it could inhale. When I pulled back, my reflection in the viewport startled me, pale, hollow-eyed. But for a second, just a second, I thought the reflection moved differently, that it blinked when I didn't. By the fifth night, I was convinced the sub itself was alive. Every vibration, every creak of metal felt like a heartbeat, a pulse, and the deeper I listened, the more it sounded like a second one was beating, faint but steady beneath the first. I didn't tell Rourke. Not anymore. He watched me like I was unraveling. Maybe I was. Maybe he wanted me to. But then, one moment changed everything. I was logging readings when the tapping returned. Clear, sharp tap, pause, tap, tap, and then, in the narrow silence that followed, I heard something that froze my blood. A voice, childlike, whispering from beyond the hull. "Let me in." I stumbled back, knocking over my chair. Rourke stormed into the control room, eyes blazing. "What did you hear?" he demanded. I shook my head. "Nothing. Just stress. Hull shift." His jaw clenched. He didn't believe me, or maybe he did, and that was worse. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do not listen to it. Do you understand? Whatever it says, it isn't for you." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but before I could, the sonar blinked. A single blip pulsing steady right against our coordinates, not outside, not circling. Attached. Rourke's hand slammed the screen dark. "You didn't see that," he growled, but I had. And I knew something was already with us. It didn't appear on sonar first. It appeared in my head, like a shadow cast across thought before it touched the glass. By the time I saw it outside the viewport, I already knew it had been there all along. The blip on sonar from the night before should have disappeared by morning. At least, that's what I told myself. Steel contracts and expands. Signals bounce off rock. Shadows flicker on the edge of screens. That's all it should have been. But it didn't vanish. It stayed with us. Every time I checked the sonar, there it was, hovering just outside range. Too steady to be current, too large to be anything I could explain. I told myself it was a phantom echo, a trick of water density. But phantoms don't move when you move. And this one did. I didn't tell Rourke. Not yet. I watched him drink his bitter coffee. Watched him check gauges. Watched him hum that tuneless song under his breath. I wanted to believe he didn't know, but deep down I was certain he did. By the second shift, I couldn't keep silent. The blip was closer, the size of it stretching across sonar like a smear of ink. "Captain," I said, voice too thin, "do you see this?" He didn't answer right away. He only glanced, then looked away, jaw tightening. "Equipment drift," he muttered. "It's moving," I insisted. "It's been moving with us." His eyes snapped back, colder now. "Do not log it," something inside me twisted. "But protocol will get you killed," he snapped. His voice cracked across the small cabin like a whip. "You want to write it down? Then when they find this journal, they'll call you unfit. They'll scrub the mission. They'll lock you in a room and call it therapy. Is that what you want?" I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. I tried to push the thought away, but the blip gnawed at me. Each time the sonar swept, it was there. Each time I blinked, I saw its outline painted on the back of my eyelids. And then, one cycle later, I saw it for real. It was my turn at the viewport. Not that there was much to see, only endless black, our lights casting cones of pale illumination through drifting silt. I stared anyway. Sometimes staring into nothing helps remind you that nothing is all there is. Except this time, something moved. A vast shadow, darker than the dark, sweeping across the edge of the light. It didn't dart like a fish, didn't drift like debris. It moved with weight, purpose. I stumbled back so hard I nearly hit the console. "Did you see that?" I gasped. Rourke didn't look up. He was writing in his log, methodical strokes of pen. "See what?" "There, out there, a shape. It passed right across." When I turned back, the water was empty again. Just blackness. Rourke's pen didn't stop moving. "You're tired. Stop chasing ghosts." I wanted to drag him to the glass, shake him until he admitted he'd seen it too. But I didn't, because part of me knew he had seen it, and he was lying. The silence between us thickened after that. He stopped speaking unless absolutely necessary. I stopped trusting my own eyes. Every flicker of shadow in the viewport felt alive. Every groan of the hull sounded like something brushing against it. At night, the whispers were louder. Sometimes they formed words. Closer. "Listen, you brought me here." I started writing them down, not in the logbook, but in a second notebook I kept hidden beneath my bunk. If Rourke ever found it, I knew he'd destroy it. He didn't want a record of what we were seeing, or what I was hearing. And that's when I began to wonder, who was he protecting? Me, the mission, or himself? The next confrontation came 3 nights later. I was staring at sonar again, unable to look away from the slow, deliberate arc of the shadow. "It's bigger than us," I whispered, before I realized I'd spoken aloud. Rourke's hand slammed down on the console beside me. "You will not log it." I met his eyes for the first time in days. "It's real." "Then stop feeding it." "What do you mean?" His face was stone. "The more attention you give it, the closer it gets." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "That's insane." "No," he said. "That's survival." That was when I wrote the words that still haunt me. Rourke wasn't afraid of the deep. He was afraid of me. I didn't know why I wrote it. Maybe I sensed it already. The way he looked at me, not like a comrade, but like a liability. Maybe he thought I'd brought this thing with me. Maybe he wasn't wrong. Because the truth is, I hadn't told him everything. I hadn't told him that before the mission, during training dives, I'd already heard the whispers, faint, like an echo in my own head. I thought it was stress, but what if it wasn't? What if it had chosen me then and followed me here? The first time I saw the shape fully, I nearly screamed. I'd leaned too close to the viewport, eyes straining into the dark, and then the light caught it, just the edge, a curve, smooth, black, stretching beyond the beam in both directions. No scales, no fins, just skin, endless pulsing skin, and then it moved. The entire wall of blackness shifted past, silent and slow, like a continent sliding through water. I staggered back, heart pounding. "Captain!" Rourke didn't move. "Captain, it's right there." Still nothing. I turned to him and saw his eyes squeeze shut, fists clenched so tight his knuckles bled white. He didn't need to look. He already knew. The days after that blurred. I couldn't eat, could barely breathe. Every time I blinked, I saw it again. The impossible scale of it, gliding just beyond reach. Sonar readings were useless now. They flickered, warped, scrambled into nonsense. I logged the data anyway, though half of it was lies, invented numbers to cover the truth. Rourke didn't stop me. Maybe he wanted me to lose credibility. One night, I woke to find him standing over me, watching. His face half in shadow, eyes unreadable. "You're feeding it," he whispered. "What are you talking about?" "You listen. You write." "That's enough." I sat up, trembling. "You think I'm making it stronger?" His silence was answer enough. I tried to stop writing. I really did, but the whispers didn't stop. And when I ignored them, they grew louder, until they weren't whispers at all, but roars, low, dragging, like the weight of the ocean itself pressing into my ears. Sometimes I thought I could feel its thoughts, not words, images, darkness stretching forever, an eye opening, my body breaking under pressure, and worse, Rourke's face, pale and broken, floating in black water. The last time I looked out the viewport that chapter, I swore I saw its eye, not glowing, not blinking, just vast and unblinking, black on black, filling the glass. I don't know how long I stared, long enough for my breath to fog the pain, long enough for my heartbeat to sync with something deeper. When I finally tore my gaze away, Rourke was standing behind me. He shook his head slowly. "You shouldn't have looked." I woke up to voices in the corridor, but there weren't supposed to be any. Rourke and I were the only ones left, and yet, I swear on my life, someone laughed just outside my door. At first I thought it was a dream. The sound was too soft, too human to belong here, in steel wrapped by miles of pressure. A laugh followed by footsteps. My heart lurched, and for a long moment I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling, too afraid to move. When I finally opened the hatch, the corridor was empty. The hum of the engines was steady, the lights pale and flickering, but the sound of the footsteps lingered, echoing in my head, mocking me. By the time I reached the mess hall, I wasn't alone. A man was sitting at the table, sleeves rolled to the elbows, grease smeared across his face. He was eating something out of a dented can, chewing loudly, as though nothing about this situation was strange. "Morning," he said, nodding to me with a grin that felt too casual. I froze in the doorway, because I knew, absolutely knew, that Rourke and I were the only ones on this submarine. I must have stood there too long, because the man frowned. What? Never seen a mechanic before? Mechanic. The word rattled through me like a loose bolt in the hull. I opened my mouth, closed it again. My throat was dry. Finally, I whispered, "You weren't here yesterday." He laughed. A deep, guttural sound that scraped my nerves raw. Been here since launch, friend. Maybe you're the one losing track of time. My head spun. Maybe I was. Maybe exhaustion had twisted my memory so badly I'd forgotten him. But then, how could I forget an entire crew member? Rourke found me minutes later, still rooted in the mess like a statue. "What's wrong with you?" He barked. "There's someone here," I whispered. In the mess, the mechanic. Rourke's eyes narrowed. "What mechanic?" I turned back to the table. Empty. The can was gone. "No trace of anyone. Right there," I shouted, desperate now. He was right there. Rourke grabbed my arm, his grip like iron. "There is no mechanic." There never was, but his face, his face said otherwise. I saw something flicker there, something he couldn't hide fast enough. That night, the whispers returned. Not soft this time. Louder, clearer. "We're still here, below decks. Don't let him lie to you." I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. The voices seeped through my skull, echoing down the corridors, bouncing against the steel. And then I heard something else, a scream. It came from the aft section, cut short too quickly, swallowed by silence. I bolted upright, heart hammering. Rourke didn't move. He sat at the console, staring at nothing, jaw clenched. "You heard that?" I said. "No." "Yes, you did." There was nothing. His voice was flat, final. The conversation ended before it began, but I couldn't let it go. The next day, I found another one. She was small, with cropped hair and steady eyes, dressed in a medic's uniform. She was standing in the narrow passage between compartments, clutching a clipboard. When she looked at me, her eyes were filled with pity. "You don't look well," she said softly. "You need rest." I couldn't breathe. "You weren't here before." She tilted her head, puzzled. "I've been here all along. You just don't remember." That phrase, it carved something deep into me. You just don't remember. Because what if that was true? What if memory had been slipping from me, piece by piece, without me even noticing? Rourke cornered me later. His voice was low, venomous. "You will stop this." What am I stopping? "They're here, Rourke!" The mechanic, the medic. He slammed me against the bulkhead, his breath hot in my face. "There is no mechanic. There is no medic. You are the only one making this real. Do you understand me?" But I didn't. I couldn't. Because I could still hear the medic's voice echoing in my skull, soft and kind. "You just don't remember." That night, I dreamed. Or maybe I didn't. I walked through the submarine. Every hatch open, every corridor lit with a sickly green glow. And everywhere I turned, they were there. The mechanic with his grease-stained grin. The medic with her pitying eyes, others too. Faces I couldn't place, uniforms I couldn't recall. They filled the sub, crowded the halls, breathing in rhythm with the groaning hull. When I tried to speak, they whispered in unison. "He's lying to you. He wants you alone. We were here before him." I woke drenched in sweat, but their whispers clung to me like seawater in my lungs. The fractures deepened. One morning, I passed the engine room and saw the mechanic again, crouched over a console, hands buried in wires. Sparks flew as he worked. "Careful," he muttered. "Hull integrity's dropping. If we don't fix it, we'll implode before dawn." Implode. The word rang like a bell. I stumbled back, heart hammering. And when I looked again, the room was empty. silent. But the scent of burnt insulation lingered in the air. By then, I'd stopped questioning whether they were real. The real question was why Rourke wanted them gone, why he pretended they'd never been here. One evening, I finally asked him, "Why are you lying?" He didn't flinch, didn't even look up from his logbook. "You're losing your mind." "No," I hissed. "You're erasing them." Finally, his eyes met mine, and in them, I saw something that froze my blood. Fear. The voices wouldn't stop. Sometimes they came from the vents, sometimes from the steel itself. Sometimes they spoke in perfect unison, like a choir of drowned men. Other times they were distorted, broken, as if filtered through water. "Help us. He knows. The thing took us." That last one, it stuck. The thing took us, because that would explain everything, wouldn't it? Why they vanished, why Rourke denied them. It wasn't my memory at fault. It wasn't madness. It was the shadow outside, the black shape, swallowing them one by one. And if that was true, then it wanted me next. The final break came during a meal. I sat across from Rourke, watching him spoon cold rations into his mouth. The silence between us was suffocating. And then I saw her, the medic, standing just behind him, face pale, eyes wide. She shook her head slowly, lips forming words without sound. "Don't trust him." I dropped my fork. It clattered against the table, echoing too loud. Rourke didn't move. "Who are you looking at?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "Her, right behind you." He turned. Nothing there. When he faced me again, his expression had changed. No longer anger, no longer denial. Something worse. Pity. That was when I understood. He wasn't trying to convince me I was wrong. He was trying to convince himself, because maybe, just maybe, he saw them too. That night, I couldn't sleep. The voices were relentless, louder than ever, pressing against the walls, vibrating through the hull. And then, from the corridor outside, I heard the mechanic again, screaming. I tore open the hatch, heart pounding, and ran. But when I reached the corridor, the sound cut off, empty, silent, except for Rourke, standing at the far end, his face shadowed. "You're feeding it," he said again, but this time his voice trembled. The first time it spoke to me, it didn't use words. It pressed its hunger into my skull until I thought my bones would crack. I don't know how long I sat staring into the viewport, waiting for something that should never have been there. The ocean outside was black, endless, the weight of 1,000,000 tons of pressure grinding against the hull. And yet, through that suffocating dark, it came. Light. Not the soft flicker of plankton. Not the drifting glow of a jellyfish. No. This was deliberate. Patterns, precise and shifting, crawling across the abyss like handwriting scrawled in fire. Blues and greens pulsing in rhythm, like a heartbeat too big for the human mind. I should have looked away. I should have called for Rourke, but I didn't, because the light wasn't just light, it was thought. At first it was subtle, a vibration at the edge of awareness, the same way you feel thunder in your chest before you hear it in your ears. Then it swelled, surged, and suddenly I wasn't in the sub anymore. I was drowning inside my own head, my mind stuffed with images that weren't mine. A trench, deeper than maps, bones stacked like towers, a heartbeat that shook stone, and hunger, endless hunger. I screamed, I think I did, but the sound never reached my lips. My throat was locked, my jaw frozen, while its thoughts folded into mine like claws hooking flesh. It wasn't speaking, it was promising. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, my cheek pressed to cold steel. The viewport still glowed faintly. pulsing like an eye that had just blinked. And in that silence, I understood something I shouldn't have. It wasn't here by accident. It had been called by me. Rourke found me an hour later. He didn't ask how I'd ended up collapsed on the deck. He didn't have to. "You let it in," he said. Those were his words. At least that's how I heard them. "You let it in, and now it won't leave." I tried to deny it, but the truth leaked out anyway. It spoke to me. He slammed his fist against the console so hard the lights flickered. "You don't speak to things like that. You survive them, or you don't. There's no bargain in the deep." But he was wrong. There was. I don't know how to explain what happened next. Even now, the memory slides in and out of clarity, like oil in water. But I remember leaning close to the viewport, watching the patterns dance, and knowing, just knowing, that it was offering me something. Not survival, not mercy, something deeper. And I took it. I won't tell you what I promised. Not now, maybe not ever, because if I said it out loud, the words would stop belonging to me. They'd belong to it. But the second I whispered my end of the bargain, without speaking, without moving my lips, the patterns outside surged, brighter, faster. The steel beneath my feet thrummed like a living thing, and inside my skull I felt relief, like it had been waiting for me all along. When I turned, Rourke was staring, his face pale, drawn tight with horror. "You brought it here," he said. I told him he was wrong. I told him it had always been here, waiting, that maybe he'd been the one denying it all along. But he didn't believe me. The days, or hours, I can't measure time anymore, blurred after that. The voices of the vanished crew grew sharper, louder. Sometimes they begged, sometimes they cursed me, sometimes they laughed, a sound like bubbles bursting in blood. Rourke stopped speaking altogether, not because he had nothing to say, but because he knew I wouldn't listen, until the night he snapped. It started small, a sound like tearing fabric coming from the engine room. I rushed in, convinced the hull was splitting. Instead, I found Rourke with a wrench in his hand, eyes wild, slamming it against the console again and again. Sparks spat across the room. "You've doomed us," he shouted. Or maybe he didn't shout. Maybe I just heard it that way. "You've chained us to it." I tried to calm him, but my hands were shaking, my words broken. "It promised," he struck the console again. "Promised what? That it would spare you, that it would let you crawl back to the surface carrying its poison in your veins." I told him he was twisting it, that he didn't understand. He came at me then. The wrench swung, missing my head by an inch, denting the wall behind me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the ladder well. "You think it chose you?" he snarled. "It's using you. You're feeding it. Every word you speak, every thought you let it pull from you." I grabbed his wrist, tried to wrestle the wrench free, but he was stronger than he looked. His breath was hot, sour with desperation, his eyes unhinged. "Maybe it didn't want the others," he hissed. "Maybe it only wanted you." I shoved him, hard. He hit the bulkhead with a sickening crack, slid down to the deck, blood smearing the steel. For a moment, I thought he was dead, but then his chest rose, shallow, ragged. He looked up at me, lips curling, and I swear the words he spoke weren't his own. "They'll never know which side you chose." I don't remember what I did after that. I don't remember if I bandaged his head, or dragged him to his bunk, or left him on the floor like discarded meat. The hours folded into each other until all that was left was the glow outside, pulsing, waiting. The deal was sealed, and Rourke knew it. You're wondering what I traded, aren't you? What I gave it in return for its promise. I can't say. Not because I won't, but because if I did, the bargain would end. And I'm not ready for that. Not yet. The last time I looked at Rourke, his eyes weren't his own. They were black, reflecting the glow outside. He opened his mouth, and for a moment I thought I'd hear his voice again. Instead, I heard mine, repeating the promise, word for word. You think you've reached the bottom, but the bottom keeps falling away beneath you. That's the first thought in my head when I opened my eyes again. I don't know if I slept, if I passed out, or if the thing holding us simply wanted me unconscious for a while. The metal is still trembling around me, shuddering like the submarine itself is trying not to scream. The fight with Rourke is over. Maybe minutes ago, maybe days. His body is... No, I can't say that. Not yet. I should start where the last recording ended. We had made the bargain, or at least I had. I can't tell you what I promised, not exactly. Some of the words weren't words at all. They were shapes of thought that pressed against my skull like knives and slid in without breaking skin. I don't know if I agreed to them or if they agreed to me, but something changed in that moment. The submarine tilted, groaned, and then we began to sink. Not like a vessel losing buoyancy, not like ballast. This was different. It felt deliberate. Like a hand had taken hold of us and was dragging us downward into something vast, something waiting. Rourke said nothing at first. He just stared at me, blood on his lip from where I'd struck him. Or maybe he struck me, I can't remember anymore. And I could see in his eyes that he knew. He knew it wasn't just the sea anymore, it was something else. And then he said, "You brought it here. The descent hasn't stopped since then. I've watched the gauges spin past limits no engineer ever built them for. I've heard the pressure alarms scream until they died, circuits shorting out one by one. Yet the hull holds. Against all logic, all science, the hull holds. We're deeper than any steel should survive. And yet, here I am, still breathing stale air, still speaking into this recorder, still sinking. Sometimes I think the submarine isn't a vessel anymore. Sometimes I think it's a coffin, and sometimes I think it's just me. My ribs, my lungs, my skull, squeezing tighter and tighter until whatever's inside finally bursts out. Through the viewport, I've begun to see it. Not clearly, never clearly, always at the edge of vision. Always where the dim glow of the instrument panels meets the blackness beyond. A shimmer of light, a pulse, a suggestion of patterns, and then eyes, not two, not four, not dozens. One, an eye so large it swallows distance, an eye that stretches wider than any map, wider than any ocean. It doesn't look at me, no, that would be too small, too human. It looks through me, through skin, through thought, through the thin film of self I still pretend to own. Do you understand what I mean? Probably not. You will. Rourke tried to deny it, of course. He shouted at me that there was nothing there, that I was hallucinating, that I was breaking down. But his voice trembled. He wouldn't look at the viewport. He wouldn't look at the black. He only looked at me, as if watching me was safer than watching what was outside. Maybe he thought I was the more dangerous thing in the room. Maybe he was right. I don't know what happened to him after. The memories are torn, jagged, overlapping. I remember his hands on my throat. I remember my hands on his. I remember both of us gasping, choking, shoving. I remember the sharp clang of skull on steel. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was alone. I've been alone ever since. Haven't I? Sometimes I still hear him. Footsteps in the companionway. The cough of his smoker's lungs. The soft mutter of his curses when the gauges spiked. But when I go to look, there's nothing. No body, no blood, no Rourke. Only the echo of someone who may never have been here at all. The submarine continues to sink. I can't describe the motion anymore. It isn't falling. It isn't gliding. It isn't diving. It's sliding. Yes, sliding between layers of water that shouldn't exist. Depth stacked upon depth, like floors of a building that was never built. Endless staircases leading nowhere but down. And in the spaces between, I see them. Not fish, not whales, not anything that belonged to Earth. Figures, pale, elongated, drifting beside the submarine with slow, deliberate grace. They have no faces, or perhaps their faces are too many, shifting from one moment to the next. One wears Rourke's, one wears mine, one wears the blank, eyeless gaze of something that has never been human. Sometimes they press their hands against the glass, long fingers, too long, fingers that curl like strands of kelp. And when they do, I feel a pressure inside my skull, like thought itself is water leaking in. They don't speak with mouths. They don't need to. They just want me to listen. I think they're memories. Not mine, not anyone's. Memories of the deep itself, of everything that has ever sunk, drowned, vanished. Ships that went down with all hands. Divers who never returned. Entire coastlines swallowed in silence. The deep remembers them all. And now it remembers me. How long have I been recording? Hours? Days? The tape feels endless. Yet I know it must be finite. Everything human is finite. Except me. Except this. I said before, maybe the submarine is a coffin. But maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a mouth. And maybe I'm already inside it. Bones dissolving. Thoughts dripping away one by one. What if there was never a submarine? What if there was never an ocean? What if it was always just me, talking to myself in the dark, inventing metal walls and dials and Rourke and the eye the size of a continent? Because the truth is worse, that there's only the watching, only the endless, patient watching. The descent hasn't stopped. The hull groans in pulses now, like a heartbeat. Or maybe it's my heartbeat. Hard to tell the difference. I swear the walls are closer than they were. Not crushed in by pressure, just nearer, like the room itself is shrinking around me. Every breath tastes of rust. Every sound echoes too loud, too close. Maybe I'm inside the eye already. Maybe I've been swallowed without noticing. Maybe this whole descent has been nothing more than the closing of a single, massive lid. I tried once to stop speaking, to just sit in silence, to deny it my voice. But the silence is worse. In silence, I can hear it breathing. In silence, I can hear the slow scrape of something vast against the hull, dragging us deeper, deeper, deeper. In silence, I can hear my own thoughts repeat in a voice that isn't mine. So I keep talking, even now, especially now. If I stop, I'm afraid the voice that answers won't be mine anymore. I told you already, I saw its eye, but I didn't tell you what else I saw. When it opened, the darkness shifted, a lid sliding back, an abyss within an abyss. And for one impossible instant, I saw reflected in that surface not just me, not just the submarine, but everything. Entire oceans, continents, the curve of the planet, stars bending down like they were being dragged into the pupil. It wasn't looking at me, it was looking out, and I was just the glass between. I think the bargain wasn't about me at all. It never wanted me. It never needed me. It wanted the door, and I opened it. The submarine is gone. I know I said I was still inside it, but I don't feel the floor anymore. I don't feel the walls. I don't feel air in my lungs or blood in my veins. There's only the sinking, only the watching, and only the voice. My voice, but not mine. Repeating, repeating, repeating. The tape is almost done. I can hear it clicking in the reel, slowing. So listen carefully. If you've heard everything I've said, if you've followed me this far, then you've already seen it. Maybe not with your eyes, but in the back of your skull. In the part of your brain that trembles when you sense you're being watched. Don't turn around. Don't look for it. It's too late, because if you're hearing this, it's already looking at you. The tape ended. I heard the click myself, and yet, you're still listening, aren't you? That's how this begins. Not with me pressing a button, not with a new reel, not with anything human. Just the sound of silence breaking open into words that shouldn't exist. I told you before the last line. It's already looking at you. Maybe you thought that was the end. Maybe you wanted it to be. But the deep has no end. And neither do I. I don't remember speaking this. My throat feels raw, shredded, as if I've been screaming underwater for years. Yet the words pour out, shaped in my voice, spilling across magnetic tape that should have stopped turning long ago. Sometimes I think it isn't me speaking. Sometimes I think it's the echo. The deep doesn't just watch, it repeats. It takes every sound, every breath, every thought, and throws it back at you until you can't tell if you're hearing your own voice or something else. So maybe this isn't me. Maybe this is what the deep thinks I sound like. Rourke's here again. Or at least something that remembers Rourke. He doesn't accuse me anymore. He doesn't shout, doesn't strike. He just hums. A low tune, half a sea shanty, half a lullaby. The same one he used to whistle on deck before we submerged. I hear it in the corridor. I hear it in the vents. I hear it in my teeth. When I follow it, there's no one. When I ignore it, it grows louder until I feel my skull splitting. I don't think he's alive. I don't think he's dead either. He's just another echo. The submarine. It's not a submarine anymore. The walls pulse. The floors bend. The air tastes wet, like lungs full of salt. Sometimes I think I'm inside the eye already. Sometimes I think I never left it. There are doors where there weren't doors before. Hatches that open into corridors I don't remember walking. I go through one, and I end up where I started. I shut my eyes, open them again, and there are more. Each one waiting, yawning, leading downward, always downward. I don't think they lead to other rooms. I think they lead deeper into it. I hear more voices now. Not just Rourke, not just me, the mechanic I told you about, the medic. Men and women I swore were real, who Rourke swore never existed. They whisper in the corners of the hull, laughter and sobs and murmurs of prayer. We're still here, they say. You brought us, they say. You promised. Their voices overlap mine sometimes. They seep into my sentences, my pauses, my thoughts. You've probably heard them already. Don't deny it. A scrape under my words, a second tone in my throat. They're not gone. They're waiting for you too. I think I understand the bargain now. It wasn't about survival. It wasn't about knowledge. It wasn't even about me. It was about continuity. The deep doesn't need us to live. It needs us to continue, to keep speaking, to keep echoing, to keep dragging the sound of ourselves into ears that don't want to hear. That's the only way it grows. Not by swallowing ships, not by crushing steel, but by passing from mouth to ear to mind, mind to silence, until silence becomes impossible. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening. I didn't pull you into this. The deep did. My bargain wasn't with words. It was with attention. The moment you leaned closer, the moment you strained to hear, the moment you wondered if I was lying or broken or real, that was when it saw you. Do you feel it now? That pressure at the base of your skull, that prickle behind your eyes, as if someone is staring too long from the corner of the room. Don't look. Don't turn. It wants you to. Sometimes I hear laughter on the tape. Not mine. Not Rourke's. Not the crew. Laughter older than oceans. It doesn't sound cruel. It doesn't sound kind. It just sounds patient. Like it knows I'll break. And when I do, it will laugh the same way through you. The eye is closer now. I can't see it through the viewport anymore. I see it through the tape itself. Every hiss, every pop, every drag of my breath is a lid opening and closing. opening and closing. It's not watching from outside anymore. It's watching through this. Through me. Through the recording. Through the words I'm pressing into your ears right now. Do you understand what I mean? Probably not. You will. There's a silence here that isn't silence. It fills every pause. It stretches behind every syllable. If you hold your breath long enough while I stop speaking, you can hear it, like a vast body shifting in the dark.